got everybody. At this time, we will call this meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Anson.
Here.
Trustee Doro. Here. Trustee Myers.
Here.
Trustee Walschlager. Here. Trustee Ledke. Here. Trustee Connor.
Here.
President Vanderstall.
Here. If you'd all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Trustee Connor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. At this time, we have a new officer that is going to get sworn in for the Village of Hartland. Matthew, if you would like to step forward. If you just step close to this, because we got to have it for. Yep. It's Shea, correct?
Yep.
Matthew Shea. Go ahead.
I, Matthew Shea,
Do solemnly swear that I will support and comply
do solemnly swear that I will support and comply
with the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm sorry, we're going to start over. Very embarrassing, but I'm going to continue because I don't want to take away from your moment. I am sincerely sorry.
All good.
Please raise your right hand.
Okay.
I, Matthew Shea,
I, Matthew Shea,
do solemnly swear that I will support and comply
do solemnly swear that I will support and comply
with the Constitution of the United States of America,
with the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Wisconsin,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Wisconsin,
the Charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Hartland,
the Charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Hartland,
the rules and regulations of the Hartland Police Department,
the rules and regulations of the Hartland Police Department,
and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of my office as police officer to the best of my ability.
And impartially discharge the duties of my office as police officer to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On behalf of about 9,000 plus citizens, thank you very much. The mic is yours.
You don't have to say anything unless you want to.
Thank you.
No,
Congratulations.
I'm sorry.
So this is Matthew Shea. This is our newest officer. He started in the Police Recruit Academy this January, graduated last week, and had his first official day on the job this your fans joining us tonight.
So my family's in the back. That's my, oh, they rose their hand. Wow, okay, so the one in the yellow, that's my mom. The one to her right, that's my sister Caitlin. And my dad in the blue plaid, that's my dad, Mike.
And Mike, if you want to come forward, we're going to present Matt his badge. Mike was a police officer in the Village of Brown Deer for many years. He's retired, and we're going to have Mike pin Matt's badge.
Chief, I forgot my glasses.
Oh, this should go well.
Oh, it's the wrong side. Okay. There you go. Come on.
So now it's official. We're going to have a little social hour, so anyone that's done with the meeting, after your item's up, feel free to join us. We'll have some cake and coffee, get to know Officer Shea a little better and his family and the rest of the officers at the Hartland Police Department.
So,
Thank you.
Thank
all right.
you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome. As is customary, anybody that wants to go for cake, don't hesitate. You can go now. And go and enjoy the festivities. And to everybody here, I sincerely apologize for forgetting to ask him to raise his right hand. I hope I didn't blemish his moment, but I do truly apologize.
We're going for
So anybody that wants to go for cake, feel free to go. At this time, I'm getting ahead of myself. At this time, we have public comments. If anybody would like to speak, please step towards the podium, and if we need to, we'll move that mic over there. But anybody that wants to speak in public comments? No one. Last call. Okay. Since no one is going to speak in public comments, we're going to move to our first item of business. We have a new police officer coming on tonight, and we have one that will soon be leaving us that's served this community for a very long time. So I'd like to read a proclamation honoring Mark Jorgensen on his retirement from the Village of Hartland Police Department after 32 years of service. A proclamation in recognition of loyal service to the Village of Hartland by Mark L. Jorgensen. Whereas Mark L. Jorgensen served the Village of Hartland for 32 years, and whereas Mark Jorgensen began his career with the Village of Hartland Police Department on August 29, 1988 as a police officer. Officer Jorgensen remained in the patrol until his last tour of duty, which will be May 17, 2021. And whereas Mark L. Jorgensen displayed selfless commitment to the citizens of the Village of Hartland through his work in the Patrol Division, the Tactical Enforcement Unit, the Major Investigations Unit, and as a fingerprint expert. And whereas Mark L. Jorgensen served the Village of Hartland as a member of the Tactical Enforcement Unit for 7 years and was a member of the Major Investigations Unit for 15 years. Mark Jorgensen was also a field training officer for 3 years and a fingerprint expert for 21 years. And whereas the dedication and commitment shown by Mark Jorgensen has led to the arrest of many crime suspects, and he has helped many crime victims. Whereas Mark Jorgensen's greatest achievement came from helping his fellow officers and citizens, which were acknowledged by various thank you letters, emails, and calls. And whereas Mark L. Jorgensen conducted himself with the highest level of professionalism, dedication, and enthusiasm. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that Mark L. Jorgensen is to be commended for his many years of service to the Village of Hartland and is given every best wish for the coming years. Mark, thank you. Even though he's not here, I hope that anybody that sees him will give their thanks. This will be read to Mark also on the day that he is actually retiring, but we wanted to read it here tonight. Chief, do you want to take that?
Sure.
On his behalf?
Absolutely. And if I could just say one quick thing.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the proclamation. It does mean a lot to Mark, over 32 years of service here at the Village of Hartland. He will be a resource that will be greatly missed. He is literally a jack of all trades. Anything we throw at him, he's been great throughout the years and done an absolutely amazing job. So we will miss Mark coming up. His official retirement date is May 17th. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight due to another family engagement. So this is unfortunately the closest board meeting to his actual date of retirement, so we couldn't make those puzzle pieces fit together. But Mark appreciates it. As the village president said, we will present this to him on his day of retirement. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. The next item we have is a consideration of a motion to approve the village board minutes from the April 26th, 2021 meeting.
Also moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. The next item we have is a consideration of a motion to approve the vouchers for payments in the amount of $338,505.64.
I make a motion to approve the vouchers for $338,505.64.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the vouchers for payment. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
That motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is a consideration of an action related to licenses and permits. Consideration of a motion to approve an operator's bartender license. This is for Caitlin McCarthy.
I'll make the motion that we approve the operator's bartending license.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve that bartender's license. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. The next we have is a consideration of a motion to approve a street use permit for Hartland Gran Prix Bike, bike race on June 23rd. I believe we have presenters here. This is just for everybody to know, this downtown Heartland bid is the applicant. Quite a few different roads in the downtown as listed on our form. This is Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021 from 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Again, Michelle, the bid director. So we came to you 2 weeks ago with an event permit, and we realized that we needed to do some notifications, get some signatures for those affected by the race course. So I did send in the notification that we dropped off to every resident that's on Warren, Maple, Park, and Goodwin. So we tried to reach as many people as we could, knocking on their doors, explaining the actual road closures, timing of everything, getting their signatures, answering any questions. So those were submitted to you as well. And in the meantime, from now to the last board meeting, we did get a slight schedule change. So the roads would be actually closed a little bit later than we anticipated. So now it would be between 10 and 10:30 would be the road closures until 10 p.m. So originally we had said 9 a.m. was the road closure. So those are the only changes and updates I have for you since we last spoke. Oh, and I'll add one more thing. 2 days after the last board meeting, I met with DPW, police, fire, and we had a really good conversation because I know police staffing was a major concern, and also on that the agenda packet is a map of where we plan to put permanent vehicles instead of putting actual police officers, so that if anybody did need to get out during those gaps of intermission, we could easily move that vehicle and get people out. Also submitted in the packet was the race schedule, so you can also see this one, that most races are about 40 to 45 minutes long with 10-minute gaps in between. So again, if anybody had an emergency, they needed to get home from the doctor, they needed to get to the doctor, we could get them out of the race course if they were on that. So that was another item that was submitted. And we do have people here from Tour of America's Dairyland if there's any specific event questions as well.
So how do the people, if they want to get out of their house, they have to go to the doctor? How do you know that, or they know that they're supposed to go and when and what time and outside if they don't have this information? I mean, are they supposed to drive out there and dodge the bikes and then go, or?
Nope. No. So what would actually happen we're going to have a lot of volunteers and hopefully some, after the conversation with police, at least one person like kind of patrolling the area. But there will be people not allowing cars out. They will, make sure that we're waiting for a break to happen and then letting them out of a controlled intersection. So that, because we need to be concerned of the safety of the bikers as well.
So it shouldn't be a problem, people getting out of their house at a certain time?
No. Sorry.
Chief, because it's an open meeting, we gotta leave it open. I'm sorry. I know you were just trying to help with the noise. Sorry for the interruption. You can tell them to be quiet out there too, Chief. Thanks, Chief. Go ahead. Sorry.
That was it.
Mike?
Yeah.
You done?
I'm done, thanks.
On the tail end of
Mine?
Mike's, what would be the anticipated wait time for someone, I have several questions, but if someone has to go to work, they can't park the car somewhere else because they just can't walk that far. They have to park at home, they're on, let's say, Maple Avenue.
Sure.
So they call somebody, whoever you have designated, and how do they get that number? And when they call, what's a approximate wait time?
So we would, before the race, have something like this, you know, the week before or 2 weeks before, whatever we, you know, the discretion of the group is saying that here's all the details. This is the number that you need to call if you need to get out. Here's the parking lots that you can park if you can walk, if you cannot. But according to this, you know, if they realize at 12:30, shoot, I need to get out of my car or out of my house, they're going to have to wait that full 40 minutes until the race is done. So it could depend on when they realize.
But if it's something
Yeah.
they would know in advance, like going to work, they just might have to leave 20 minutes earlier than they would normally leave, for example.
For sure.
To catch that window of opportunity.
Yeah.
So they'll know this schedule in advance.
So these gaps will be posted for their
Yes.
knowledge?
I just wanted to bring up some of the comments that I received over the last few days is the trains are not going to stop running. And they'll be running, you know, during the day. And there's already a backup, especially on Maple. And they had concerns about that. And specifically, there was a citizen, she works in North Lake, she lives on Maple Avenue, and she gets called into work several times during the week. She doesn't really know when, but when they call her, she has to go. And she's the one that can't park. She has to be home. We already talked about the disabled. And Kelsey already talked to, what if there happens to be a funeral? Of course, we don't know that ahead of time, but what if there's a funeral?
Yep, so
We have not been able to get a hold of Renee herself, the owner of the funeral parlor, but Jim spoke to several of the employees there. They said that they have flexibility in their schedule.
Oftentimes, you know, they can schedule, you know, a funeral, not particularly on that day, but maybe the next day or the day before. Depends on how it all plays out. Like Jesse said, I did not talk to Renee herself. She was not available the day that I stopped in. She was going to visit a family member. And so, but the others seem to say that it seemed, you know, somewhat reasonable, and we can talk
Okay.
with her specifically as the event would get closer.
My next question is when it says where, you've got Capitol, Maple, Warren, and Goodwin, but you've got it marked on Park Avenue here. So are you using Park Avenue or are you using Warren Avenue?
It's in the center.
Warren is the center, so we were saying
Right.
that we would notify those people.
Oh, okay, so you notified them, but the race is not going on Warren.
Correct.
Okay. And what was the other one? In the paper, it said 2,000 people, and you had said roughly 1,000. Did they just make that up, or?
No, I thought we had said around 1,500 to 2,000. It's all an approximate.
Okay. That's all I have. I'm not gonna go with the rest.
And to cover to go back to the funeral question, the race directors have experience in other communities being on a course that was closing a funeral home. And so what they did was they actually, had everybody like line up all of the cars, the processional that needed to get into, I believe it was a cemetery actually. So that they waited for the race to finish up. The sheriff opened the roads, everybody was escorted to the cemetery, they closed it up, race continued, and then when everybody was ready to leave, they all congregated right at the start line, or the entrance, and then got out. So it was very controlled, very safe, and they were able to do that.
Okay.
Any other things, Ann?
No, I'm done.
You yield? Go ahead.
Now you.
Thank you. A couple questions, actually. Kelly, in the back, just a question for you. Do you know if we're going to be utilizing the baseball fields at Nixon on June 20th? It's a Wednesday night. Yeah, so usually Nixon and both Nixon fields might be utilized on Wednesday night. So obviously a little bit of a concern just in that sense of, and sorry I didn't think of that one 2 weeks ago. It came to me after the fact. Considering that's like Maples, the way to get to Nixon. So the only way to get into both fields is you'd have to come the opposite way. So we
Sure.
just want to make sure we have the detour signs then
Yep.
further down.
Yep.
And then I just wanted to know a little bit more clarification about the meeting that you had with the police and fire, and they felt good about it, and you have a plan. I'm assuming you have a plan set up, Chief, for any emergencies, not only just emergencies for our residents during the event that are at their homes or businesses, but then also now an influx of potentially 2,000 people on the road. So I didn't know if you wanted to comment for that, if that's okay.
Good evening, Torrin Misko, Chief of Police for Hartland Police Department. There was a meeting, Deputy Chief Calera and Captain Kelsey attended in my absence. I had a prior commitment. Hearing back from them, I had asked them to ask a couple questions just so logistically I knew how we were going to handle things. Everything you mentioned is obviously concerns. We'll have plans in place. Obviously, that's going to be a big influx to the area, but I think that's why we're doing it, right? We're trying to get downtown businesses to get people made aware of their presence and bring that to that downtown community. So I think it's a good thing for that particular community. One of the questions that was asked is full road closures. That helps us big time. Some of these races try to do it where they time it. Obviously, this is a small course, so it's not as likely on a small course, but some are bigger. And then we time them and try to like close it in time for the bikes to come. That gets very problematic and it gets very staff heavy driven. And we're a smaller police agency, we just don't have the officers to take care of that type of demand. So with the full road closures, we talked with DPW. We got some plans in place with not just barricades, but I think it was already mentioned, some DPW vehicles to make sure no one tries to sneak through the barricades. It's obvious this road is closed for the safety of the participants in the race. There was a question about police personnel being on scene. I think that's a great idea. I know there was some back and forth on amounts, and we can support a certain amount. Obviously, between our 17 officers at the PD, I can't just say 10 of us are assigned to this. I have a 24-hour operation of staff, obviously. But we could do some police officer support for the race. I think it's good to have that liaison with the group. So when there is that house that needs to get out, we coordinate that all together. We're on the same page. We efficiently get them in and out of that race course. So I think this is definitely a doable event when it comes to police services. The one question we asked, and we always ask this for the board, in your decision making on your permits when it comes to special event permits, is there was a question about reimbursement, because obviously our on-duty staff, we use those for on-duty incidents. There's still a village of almost 10,000 people that will continue to get calls for service outside of this bike race. So those on-duty staff, we can never commit those to an event because then something comes in and I gotta leave and then you're high and dry. So this, we would hire on dedicated staff, which would unfortunately have to be on overtime just because we don't have that amount of staff where we just have extra officers laying around doing nothing. They're all scheduled, believe it or not, for specific reasons. And I know that, and you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, there was some indication that that would be possible. The only reason we asked that question, because if it's not, we just let you know that there's a cost to that. That's not to say you shouldn't do it, but I think the board should know what the costs are for the village before they're making the decisions on what they're bringing. If you guys determine the event's worth it for the community, obviously we have budgets and we'll work through that because of your direction on that event. So I'm not saying either way it's a deal breaker. We just like to bring you the full information as to how we plan on pursuing. Depending on staff, if we do one officer or two officers, it would be about probably $750 or $1,500 in overtime over the full event because it's a 12-plus hour type event.
Just from what you said, I'm sorry, so who exactly is paying? The village is paying for the compensation, the overtime?
So that was the question presented to the bid. So in essence, they said they would be able to cover the reimbursement if needed.
Okay.
So the bid would be, which is still the taxpayer, obviously, it just wouldn't be the Village of Hartland.
So it's coming out of the bid's budget?
Correct, they would
Okay.
reimburse it potentially,
Oh,
unless
No.
that wasn't, like, I didn't say sign the contract or anything like that. That was just
That's what the chief is asking, is
That's
that
what
there is
I'm
a cost to that?
informing.
That's something for you
okay,
guys
I
to
got you,
consider,
okay.
whether you want that to be a,
So it's just a question, and again, it's not that we say we're not doing it unless we're reimbursed. It's just, I think the board should know what the costs go into the event, so you can make the proper decision whether you want to hold this or not. Again, I think it's a very doable. I'm sure there'll be hiccups when you close a major part of downtown Heartland as far as traffic flow. That's to be expected, I think. One good thing is, I think we got a good dry run this last week, and we understand good detour routes when it comes to downtown traffic.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks, chief.
I was confused. So actually, that leads me to another question. I'm so sorry. So with just the cost analysis, is the same thing having to happen with the DPW and fire as well? And that's just my ignorance, so I apologize.
So real brief on fire, they do have their own first aid, so there is not a request for an ambulance. Obviously, if there's some kind of bad cycle, that would be a 911 event, and obviously the ambulance would be needed for that. As far as DPW, we're gonna be dropping off barricades and doing that kind of items, so that's not a significant cost. You know, putting the barricades out when we need to close them with the PD again would be minor, and taking them back would be minor, but,
You know, but that just,
Clarify the payment from the bid. So if there was a payment that needed to come from the bid to either the police or DPW, we wouldn't necessarily take it out of our bid budget. We would actually be finding event sponsors to cover these costs. So,
let me just throw something out here. When you guys were all kids, the street dance came back to us with the police department saying, hey, we want to get all this money for all this overtime and everything for all the police protection for the street dance. And the village and the board decided, look, this is helping Heartland. And we're going to come here and we're going to show Heartland the best. And we are, you know, we're just not putting our toe in the water. I mean, this is a commitment for the whole village. And I don't want to have somebody have to go out and get police protection. Because the idea is, hell, if you got to rent cops, go out and rent them. And our guys won't go there. And our chief department will never let that happen. So I don't want any idea that you guys are responsible for the police protection and for that, because that should be the village. I mean, hell, 1,000, 2,000 people here, you know, I just don't think that we can make a $2 million budget squeak a little bit to get that in there, I'm sure. So that's just my personal feeling.
Robin, were you done?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I think the event is great, and I'm really honestly torn, because I'm afraid that, you know, if I say no, it looks like I'm not supporting the bid. And you're talking about, I love the bid. You guys are phenomenal. And, you know, you drive a lot of economic growth here in Heartland, and I support that. I'm just struggling with the amount of residents. I have not talked to as many residents about an event than I have this past weekend. And that breaks my heart, because I want people to come to our community. I want them to live, work, and play in our community. I want them to see our community. But I think it's because it's all the roads that I'm struggling with. It's that main corridor, that main artery. It's, you know, right now we've definitely got the artery closed off, right? The detour, though, is taking you straight down Park. You know, you can come down Warren. You can take Maple all the way to East Capitol and come up. And so it's really strategically thought out to get you around that artery, which I know is being impacted right now for the businesses that are there. So, you know, God bless you for understanding and sticking with us through it. And we've been able to really do some extremely good proactive communication to the residents and the businesses. I mean, it's constant communication coming out, and I commend that. I'm just really struggling because I've never had so many residents, and they're struggling. They're saying they love Heartland, they love what you guys do, they love the events in Heartland, they love being a part of those events. They're just going, what if I got to get out in the middle of the day and now I missed my window and now I'm late to, you know, just it's just one extra thing. I'm like so stuck, and I know that doesn't help you at all right now. But I love the bid, and it's a great idea because it's bringing people here, which is what you're supposed to do, and you're doing a great job at it, and I commend that. And it's a phenomenal group that you want to work with, right? Really well done. So
I guess I would just say to that, completely understandable. It may be the first time we as Heartland have done this, but this is not at all the first time Toad has done
and
this.
that's one of the things I've said to them. I
they,
agree.
they have plans for this. Excuse me.
and like we said last time, we know that this is an inconvenience. We don't think that we're just gonna come in for 12 hours and be like, oh, okay, your roads are closed. You know, we wanna try to be, they wanna be a good partners, they wanna be welcome back, you know, and say we do this 1 year and we realize this just was not a good fit for Heartland. It's not to say we're signing a 10-year contract by any means. So there's going to be some difficult, you know, hiccups here and there, hopefully not a lot, but to reiterate, you know, I understand that it's scary because people are of the unknown, but they really do try to bring this into a community event. People have, this is the time of the summer when they come out of their house, they see their neighbors, they have a block party. And so we're just trying to embrace that with bringing more business to downtown, so.
I agree with you, and I never want you to think that the bid's ever an inconvenience. Just so you know, it's not.
Yeah.
Please understand that. It's just
the,
not. It's
just the road closures.
It's like I'm looking at Maple Avenue and I'm thinking the train and then it's Park, and that's the only thing that's making me. It's whatever.
I was able to pull the Warren Avenue residents, and of the 14 households that I had gone to, 10 were very excited about the event. One was a little bit unsure, and the 3 I had no contact with, so I got no. No, I'm not sure how, the polling's going in Hartridge or some of the other parts of the village that are going to have, access issues, but the ones that are very much affected by it seem to be fairly in favor of it.
I'm done, thank you.
I'm gonna jump in. Is anybody here to speak? I didn't ask. Anybody to speak on public comment? If you'd like to come up towards the podium.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'd be curious to know what the feedback was on Park Avenue, because I know
You
that.
gotta direct it at the board. You gotta direct the comment at the board.
Well, I live on Park Avenue.
And your name is?
My name's Camille Pierce,
Okay, and the name of the number in the street. Sorry.
192 East Park Avenue.
And I'm Jill Hazad, 186 East Park Avenue.
And I'm also representing our neighbors who work third shift and would have park somewhere else to accommodate their vehicle to get to and from work. One works at 4 o'clock in the morning and one works until at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I currently work from home but have to go into the office on call. And I work supporting local businesses that are within our community, one of which would be impacted by this race. And I struggle with that because how can I support those businesses if I can't effectively do that based on a closure for 12 hours? You want to close our street for 4 hours on a Saturday morning? Go for it. I've lived here 14 years. I have seen everything from Easter egg hunts to music in the park, to street dances, to parades, to everything under the sun, and I have loved living where I live. I cannot get on board with this. I cannot support being deadlocked to my house on a Wednesday, a work day. I have 2 children. I have a job. I am in grad school. I have to do things when it's convenient for me. I'm widowed. I don't have somebody else that I can just depend on to go do things for me. It is me and me alone. And to not be able to come and go from my home for 12 hours, I think is unacceptable.
I would agree. My children are working age, and that son walking to get to his car early in the morning to go to work. Same with my daughter. We're not the only ones either. I would venture a guess that the majority of Park Avenue, at least on our corner, right by Goodwin,
I see the gentleman here that I spoke with when he came to my home, and I let him know I was not behind this when he handed that to me. And I know my neighbor was outside, and he let that gentleman know that he refused to sign the paperwork.
I refuse to sign.
We share a driveway, so I saw him outside. I also know that our neighbors 2 doors down, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, they didn't sign either. So I hear what they're saying, that other places may have agreed. I know that East Park Avenue did not.
Correct.
We see all summer long, all year long, event after event after event after event after event. And now you want to close our street for 12 hours? I have a problem with that, and I love my community. So I've lived here 14 years. I love it. I stand behind it. I think everything about this village is amazing. I can't do this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
President, just a question for you. I'm sorry, real quick. The signatures are just to notify the residents or businesses, correct? Not that they're in favor?
Anybody that wanted to sign can show that they were given notification.
Just notification?
Correct.
Yeah, not a yes or no. Okay, just, thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie Fleming. I live over on 322 Lawn Street, so I'm not directly affected, but I will be in another way. I love the event. It's super cool. I'm not a biker, wish I was, but it's a cool idea. Just something to consider. That's right in the middle of summer school. I've got kids that are going to be going to the middle school, and just, you know, from where I am on Lawn Street, I would have to go, I'm guessing, out to 16 and go up around to North Shore Drive. Totally fine. Fine. I get that because, you know, we need to make accommodations. Just something to consider. While it's good to notify the people that are on those routes, there's going to have to be way more notifications because there's lots of people that are going to be like, what do you mean I have to, you know, take an extra 20 minutes, which, I mean, it's 20 minutes, but it's still 20 minutes to go to and from. So just a reminder, because there's going to be kids going to North. I don't know if any classes are at South, but I do know there are classes at the middle school, so there will be people coming back and forth at least twice. The first one probably wouldn't affect you guys because it's early. It's like around the 8 o'clock-ish hour, but they all get done around noon. So, you know, how you want to work that out, I don't know, but just an extra reminder that I know the districts have been notified, but just for the parents as well, it's going to be just an extra factor because you need more things to think about, but just something to remember. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Does anybody on Zoom want to speak in public comment? Anybody on this side of the?
I have not seen anything.
Okay. Anybody on this side of the board? I know some people over here went. I don't know if anybody else wants to go. Does anybody on this side have anything that they have for discussion?
No, I appreciate that the bid did go back out and get the signatures as requested, and that you had to go through the extra steps. So I appreciate the efforts that you have gone through. I really do.
Just that, you know, now I understand they're not going to be actually locked in their house for 12 hours.
Right.
So you've got a window of, and it's inconvenient, very inconvenient, but.
Yep.
Can I speak up as, I guess, public and business owner? Matt Gardner.
Sure. Yeah, that's public comment. If you could say your business.
The Bicycle Barn. Obviously, with my business, I am fully in support of doing this. But I think, you know, I've met with these guys that are hosting and running the race series. To give you a good example, they are in the business, the same business I am, didn't know I was there. So I think the importance of getting small business in the area is huge. And I totally get and understand the inconvenience to the homeowners and even some of the businesses that may not benefit quite as much as mine or some of those that can do business on that day. But getting the word out there and bringing the people in and showing them what a cool downtown area this is and what we have to offer is priceless. If we don't do things like this, they're not going to have the great neighborhoods and homes in an area that they want to live in and support if we don't do things like this. And I get it's an inconvenience, but I do strongly believe with some of the things that we have talked about and that we can provide a little bit more of a convenience to them than what it sounds like if we're just locking you in for 12 hours. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to briefly address the resident concern, again, also I understand the inconvenience. This past week, you know, I go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's still dark, and this past week I've been walking a couple blocks because of the street closure. So I think it's just one of those things, if you live in a busier area, there are going to be events that affect you. Thankfully, it'll be June where it's lighter at that time of, or, you know, closer at that time of day. It's warmer at that point. We're not asking anyone to walk 3-4 blocks when it's January and when it's winter. If there's an event, there's always going to be an inconvenience, but I think this is the lesser of all evils and the best way of doing it. So just a quick thing on that.
Sorry. I guess, and
So
so,
the-
and
Now, we're not gonna be able to do, I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you speak. But for everybody else, once you go once for public comment, you address the board.
Well,
We can't do this because it's gonna turn into a
and
discussion.
I understand. What I'm struggling with is people are addressing what I stated or what my comments were. And I am less about the fact that it's an inconvenience and more about the fact that if you want to do this for a 4-hour time frame, I can appreciate that. On a Wednesday, I just think that that is not conducive to a happy community. I am fully in support of my community. I am fully in support of bringing people to this community. But how can you get your residents to support their community if this is the type of stuff that they have to endure? I am all for supporting the downtown and all for bringing business to the downtown. I think it could be done in a different way. And I think that there are alternatives that could be explored. Do it in the parking lot of Arrowhead High School. You've got more than enough space there to try to do something like that. I'll be honest, I am going on vacation and I'm coming back the day before this race. And I will be back from being gone for 12 days, which I am lucky to do. But I know that I'm going to have to pick up a dog from boarding, and I have no food in my house, and I will have all, these responsibilities along with working and all these things. If it was 4 hours, I could easily manage that. Easily. But to manage it for 12 hours, I think that's just, and I get that you've got these windows and things like that. Unfortunately, my life doesn't work in windows of 45 minutes. That's just not how my life works.
And I understand you, and I hear you, and the board hears you, and everyone here, and it's not that I'm shutting you down, but I gotta stick to the rule, and I hear what this doesn't work for you, I hear you, I'm just trying to stick kind of the rules, because otherwise these meetings can really go on, and I'm sorry, it may sound rude, but it is, unless the board wants to appeal and continue,
To
but
my
we.
comment then.
Stop.
If they're gonna
Stop,
throw
please
things
stop,
at me.
please stop, please stop, please stop. They are presenting a petition requesting from the body, please don't interrupt, requesting something from the body. I'm not trying to be rude. They can come and they can rebut, and we have heard you. I'm not trying to be rude to you. This is not an argument where we just go back and forth.
Correct.
It's not.
Then they can't make assumptions about what I'm stating. Because assumptions were made about my communication, and that is not what came out of my mouth.
Okay, I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to
That's
ask you to
fine.
at
I
least
will
step
sit
away
down
from the
now.
podium. I'm very, and I try to be very nice about it. I would never stop from speaking.
sir.
No, I know, I'm just letting you know.
Thank you.
Do any other trustees have anything as we have this discussion? Anybody else from the public that hasn't already spoken? I think that I'm just gonna do this because I think it needs to just get figured out one way or the other. I'm gonna make a motion to approve this event, because I think we need to make a vote, and I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of it. I'm making a motion in favor of it, but I'll make a motion, and I'm gonna see if I get a second. But I will make a motion to approve the event. I do hear the entire village. I know it seems it's an inconvenience. I also see how much work has gone in for years to trying to do things for the downtown. I just saw an amazing event with the Bark River Bash, trying to put focus on that. I know we're all trying to do things. I don't think it's gonna be as bad as everybody thinks. I think there will be some inconveniences and some hiccups, but that's my motion, is to approve the event and allow the bid to have that event with the sponsor. It's been moved and seconded to approve the event based on all the things and guidelines that have been put forth in the meeting with the different organizations. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That motion is carried. Obviously, continue to work with the police department and everything else. And for all the residents, especially those on the route, I was not in any way trying to be rude. I did hear you, the board heard you, and no disrespect, I just had to kind of keep it in line, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item we have is a review and consider of Comer, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same banner that we had last year. I think it's the same exact design as we had last year. That's the item. Oh, yeah.
Yep, it's the exact same banner as last year. It's just stickers going over the top to say that it's a different date.
Identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse Puzak. I own Birch and Banyan Coffee, and I'm on the chamber board as well. So yeah, exact same banner. There'll be a vinyl sticker going over the top to say that it's a different date this year. It's still the previous brand, the previous street dance brand, because that banner last year was purchased with a venue sponsor of Enters in the Beer Garden for 2 years. So the thought process was street banners are rather expensive, several $100s. So since it's a 2-year sponsorship, that was last year and this year, there's a potential of maybe the sponsor changes for next year's. So why don't we wait on seeing if that would change, doing the new branded banner next year, keeping the same brand this year, if that makes sense. So
I'll make a motion to approve the banner for the
Second.
street dance.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the banner for the street dance, for the Heartland Street Dance Party in the Park. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Sorry, that's, in all honesty, that was the first time I've ever had to ask someone, and I was not trying to be rude. I'm very sorry to everyone here. I had to try to keep it in line, or I thought it was gonna turn, I'm just gonna take 3 minutes to catch my breath, if that's okay. That's the first time I've had that. Get back to order here. And with that comment from the administrator, do you want to just notify the board? You know his name, is it in front of you?
Yep, so just real quick, this next item on the agenda, we have we have three experts in the room. Ryan Atman is here. Question, comment. He did put together, I think, a kind of retrospective and prospective memo on the well and a little bit of the history and then a little bit of the future. We are also joined on Zoom. Hector was not able to make the meeting tonight, but we are joined on Zoom. Joseph, what's your last name, sir?
Rawling, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're joined by Joseph. Joseph is representing, helping with the village, representing us on this matter and is an expert in this subject. And so Hector thought would be prudent. And then last but not least, the last expert in the room, Linda Delamora is here, also representing the legal services for us. So between the three of those experts, if anyone has any questions or comments, also in the room, I see in the back is the property owner, Mr. Jim Seaman.
So with that, I think if the board will allow, there's a couple different ways of conducting the obtaining of this well site. And the attorney, I'd like to turn it over to the attorney that's here on Zoom. The way in which they're going about it, it sounds bad. A lot of times if you just, you're condemning a house and saying you can't live there anymore or whatever. But in this case, condemnation is a legal process. So I'm going to turn it over to the attorney so you can brief the board on what this process is, but it's not, we are going to pay a value for this property. It's not like we're just condemning a property. Sir, if you'd like to take it away, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you. Again, my name is J.J. Rawling with Reason and Roper. I work with Attorney Delamora, Hector Delamora, and Linda Delamora. Hector asked me to speak a little bit about the condemnation process and sort of what that means in Wisconsin. And, as you pointed out, that's accurate. Condemnation, has a lot of, sort of negative feelings or, associations with it. You think about it like raising a house that's in trouble or something like that. But it's also a way for the government to acquire property for a public purpose as long as it pays just compensation. And so that's what would be done here is you sort of start a process where you say, okay, well, this is the property that we identified, and here's the public purpose to which we would put it. Let's start this process, and you start with filing a resolution, and it identifies what you're going to take or what you're going to acquire, and then after that, you get an appraisal that you have to turn over to the landowner, indicating what you think or what the appraiser thinks the value of the property being acquired is, whether that's easement, anything. And then the other side, landowner here, would be able to get their own appraisal reimbursed by the village here to start the process of good faith negotiations, figuring out how much compensation is going to be appropriate for the acquisition of what's been identified. So that's sort of the kickoff, and that can take, well, the landowner would have 60 days after the village turns over its appraisal and initial offer. So it takes a little time. It doesn't necessarily mean that this would all go to an award of damages, which is sort of the last step in the condemnation process. Oftentimes things resolve beforehand. You need not, go all the way through the taking. You can sort of work out a deal and transfer property that way, an agreed price conveyance. So that ultimately looks a lot more like a, sort of typical conveyance. It's just here you need to give the landowner some procedural safeguards in that they get a shot to figure out what the value is of what's being acquired from them, and they get some time to look over what the village proposes to acquire. So Wisconsin has a few safeguards. We have, it's not just a bang, taking of the property. and there's some room for negotiation and further discussion, which, you know, in my work representing landowners, frequently is the case where we'll work something out. So.
Thank you. So with that, the item is, it's a consideration of a motion to adopt resolution 5-10-2021 relocation order for municipal needed from, we should take these one at a time, would that be proper? Sure. That would be the item that's on the agenda now. I just wanted to allow the attorney time to speak, just so that anybody, obviously he's there for questions, but just to give a brief overview.
So we're just looking for a motion to adopt this resolution, the relocation order?
Yeah, this would.
We're gonna go ahead with the
process.
job, but not to do what the person just was saying on the, you know, not to condemn it?
No, that's, the condemnation is kind of the sale process they're using, but what this does is it affords, the Seatmans, we want to make sure that they get just compensation
Right.
for their land. And so it allows for some negotiation there, but we had promised, you know, when we were here at this last
Right.
meeting, they're not just donating it, we want to give just compensation for the land. So there's a few different appraisals that may take place, or we might see an appraisal and say, hey, we're ready to go. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, but if all of a sudden we agree on whatever price it should be, sometimes it kind of, then it's going. But this starts the whole process.
Okay, so we're just looking for a motion to get the ball rolling. Not, it doesn't commit us to anything outside of negotiation.
Not true, it would commit us. I'll let the attorney speak.
You need not ultimately condemn, I should be more precise in my words. You need not ultimately file an award of damages which would take the property. You pay the award, that'll vest the property towards you. But you have a number of steps and safeguards in the statutes in Chapter 32 between sort of now, the resolution kicking everything off, and ultimately then where there's a lot of room for negotiation and in fact a requirement to negotiate in good faith. So it is the condemnation process, but it need not go all the way to the taking against, you know, someone's will without a sort of worked out deal.
Mike, to clarify, are you asking if there's a way for us to back out once it's started?
I can understand that we want to make a motion that we want to get that darn well. Okay, I understand that. And we want to make sure that the developer knows that, hey, we want that well and what the property is, okay? And this is what we want. Now, if this is just going to be something that, okay, we're going to start negotiating to how we're going to pay for that, or if this is going to say, at this point in time, this is the value of the property today, and it's not going to change in the future, or is it something that is just that we're going to proceed with doing this opportunity, but not really committing? I mean, it's committing, but not authorizing anything.
It would be getting the process started. It would be authorizing the start of that
Authorizing the
process.
start of the negotiation with the developer.
Yep.
And that's what he needed to get started.
Correct.
I have a question,
No,
if you're done.
I'm done.
okay.
It was my understanding when we went over this before, that we needed the definite agreement with Mr. Seatman about us purchasing this from him at a fair price before we could approve any more development in that area of the village. I'm confused.
I'm gonna refer to Mr. Ammon, can you?
I'm
Because I
confused.
believe you've been involved also.
And I
My
know-
understanding is our legal counsel has already been talking with Seatmans. They're already working towards that end, and we
That's what-
asked,
yes.
once this process starts, the process is going. Am I correct on that, sir?
That's correct.
They
Right.
can't just back out of it.
But-
The Seatmans aren't gonna get back out
I
of it.
understand, and Mr. Seaman had said he'd work on it and get everything done hopefully by this meeting, and I know he's probably been doing that, but he also wants to get going on his development.
Correct.
I'm sure. And if we were talking about negotiations, from what our legal authorities saying, I mean, we can't wait, or not we, the developer, I'm sure doesn't want to wait weeks and months.
No,
So that's why I was confused is,
the
does
intention
this
is
for
that
sure-
we get to this point and that's what this gets started.
intention,
Mis-
but I'm asking about the timeline.
There's a timeline that it takes to negotiate because we want to make sure that Mr. Seatman gets a fair value.
Right.
So Mr. Seatman, I'm not sure positively on this. There's a few appraisals that will take place.
Okay.
But let's say we're $5,000 apart.
Okay.
There's some negotiation that happens. Or let's say we feel comfortable with something and we get together with Mr. Seatman and we're like, hey, we'll pay that. Then that portion is done. But what this gets a process rolling. Mr. Seatman couldn't just start building and say, all right, I decided you're not getting that well. He's not going to be able to do that.
So by us passing this, does that,
It gets that process going.
but it does mean that we will get it?
Yes.
Right.
You just don't know what the price is.
Right.
That's where the negotiation
And
comes.
the price
into
is all
play.
based on very fair, actual professional appraisers that go out and do an appraisal. The village couldn't just say, hey, we want 5 million for it. And Mr. Seatman knows that he's not gonna come and say, you know, whatever. The appraisers are gonna come up with a price and that leads to, that's the negotiation they're kind of talking about. We wanna make sure that all parties are happy. We do not want, we wanna pay the fair value for the land and Mr. Seatman isn't going and can't back out of it.
How does this affect the development, the proposed development?
It doesn't, it secures the well site.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes.
If we're gonna do this, we're looking at $364,000 well, okay? It's gonna cost us $35,000 just to check to see if the water is gonna be. If we don't do the well till, another 6 months or a year later, that $35,000 has been thrown in the pot. I mean, it's gone, because we have to have it retested and resampled. So now, when we make this proposal like this, is it gonna be, when they get to appraisal, are we gonna have to spend that $35,000 to go into the ground to make sure that that's gonna be okay, part of the negotiations for, is this really gonna work for us?
Mr. Hartman, can you, I will say this, one thing I do know, and that we've already had addressed, I believe it was at the last meeting, because there's so much water in Wisconsin, typically, just because there's water on a site, it doesn't change the value of the land, hence it making it possible to move forward, but correct me if I'm wrong on that.
So I'm Ryan Antman with. A great question. This potential well site dates back to 2002, when the village board had the foresight to evaluate land on the north side of the village to look for future water wells. That entails doing testing in the ground. It entails looking at land use in the area to look for contaminant sources and that kind of thing. And in the Four Winds West subdivision, there was a promising well site that was developed, and it's a very good well for the village. This particular location that was tested in 2002 also showed promise to be a good well site. Again, this particular land out on the northeast part of the village had more rounds of testing in 2012, and the previous location that is shown on this map is the one that shows the best promise for a well. As the land, in my opinion, it's becoming even more important that this village board secures the ability to develop that well at whatever time it chooses in the future. So as a part of this process, the land has been developed to the west. This land is being proposed to be developed to the east. There's easements that are already going to be provided as a part of the sand. I'm going to go by where this potential well site would be. So it's my opinion that it makes sense to formalize the village's ability at its own time and choosing to lock down that location. So one approach would be to secure the site and wait, and then do that further testing at whatever time is appropriate in the future. Another approach could be to secure that site and as the president had mentioned, the village's water supply is in a good supply, but that doesn't mean it will be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. This is really sets the village up to have the ability to develop the well site here. It puts the village board in control of when or if it desires to do that. And the residents in the Sand Hill condominium development, the first equally should benefit of having this as an option for a future well site. So it's been a part of the long-range development plans since 2002. The former landowner cooperated with the village to do this testing in 2002. The current landowner, the Seatman Group, has cooperated in the last 10 or 12 years through the testing. It's just backs and different things that the village board needs to be able to control and essentially dictate, not just as the 40-acre development occurs, but if development occurs to the land of the north as well. You'll be in a better position to do that with the site lockdown.
Can I ask you, the testing was done that the water that's in that location was good, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What year was that?
2002.
And I know that you can't say with certainty because we don't actually know unless we go drill it right now. What are the chances that that water is still good?
Very high.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to make sure.
So we really don't have to do that testing now? You wouldn't recommend us doing that?
You can wait.
We can wait.
You can wait.
We'll
And
still be safe in our future investment.
And as that land, if that land develops north of where that county highway would be redeveloped, I think there's ways to do it in a manner where that could be a future lot should you go through the process and determine that a well isn't developable. In other words, there's enough space around that where as that land is divided, I would suggest, contingency plan that there's still a buildable lot in that area, should things change with the desire to move forward with that well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion to consider the adopting resolution 50-10-2021 relocation order for municipal water system.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 510-2021, relocation order for municipal water system well site and easements needed for same. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. The next item we have is consideration of a motion to adopt Resolution, the number's the same, is that okay? 510-2021, same number with different wording. Resolution designating public depository for miscellaneous public accounts and authorizing withdrawal of public monies.
Ryan Bailey with the Village of Hartland. My item is a lot less exciting as that previous one. We used to have a relationship with Town Bank, which is located on the corner of Highway 83 and North Shore Drive. They approached me, over the last couple of years, they've approached me. Interest rates are not in a good place right now. We have some money in the LGIP. I'm looking to move to Town Bank. They have communicated that they would like to, that they are very active in communities, especially when people have money or banking with them. So kind of my hope is they're matching the LGIP rate, which is nothing to get excited about, but that they may possibly look into sponsorships or partnerships with the Village of Hartland in the future. So I'm just looking for the board's blessing to move some money from the local government investment pool with the state of Wisconsin to Town Bank on Highway 83.
And you said it was the same interest rate?
Same interest rate.
Okay.
Yeah, even we've gotten some quotes for CDs that are below. I mean, it's a very bad market. We were year and a half. 5% are not very good. We have two that we're renewing at 0.3 and 0.4.
Wow. Ryan, I have one question on that.
Sure.
When you go about this, do you usually look at quite a few different banks? And the only reason I'm asking, I know Town Bank is owned by Wintrust, which is an Illinois bank. I just didn't know if maybe there's a competitive rank by a state of Wisconsin bank or more local bank.
Yeah, we generally meet with all the local banks. We used to have relationships with many of them. Currently, we have Bank 59, and it would be Town Bank. But yeah, we used to have relationships with BMO. We've met with them. Generally, I like to keep our money pretty liquid for most of the, well, for about half of the money. But we look at other local banks. But the advantage of this account is that it is all backed. So it's what's called a MaxSafe account. So each bank can be up to $250,000 that it's covered for. So they actually take this and split this over 12 banks at 250 grand each. I think that's what the math is. 12 or 15 banks that they spread that money over to make sure everything's insured should something happen to one of those banks, that we would get our money back.
Okay.
So with anything, the key is to make sure that we put our investments in something that is insured and not going to depreciate in value.
Okay. I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and make a motion then to adopt Resolution 510-2021, resolution designating public dispository for miscellaneous public accounts and authorizing withdrawal of public monies.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 510-2021, resolution designating public depository for miscellaneous public accounts and authorizing withdrawal of public monies. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. Do we need one more? Or is he already gone? I just want to let him know he can leave.
Yeah, we do not. JJ goes by.
JJ, are you still on the Zoom call? I believe that's it. Questions on, so I just wanted to let you, make sure that you were aware of that. Did you hear me or no? Oh, is it cutting out?
For whatever reason, some of the microphones have been cutting in
Okay.
and out tonight.
It's the feed out to Zoom.
I just wanted to let him know that there won't be any more questions on. I wanted to make sure he was aware. He did not have to stay for the duration of the meeting if he didn't want.
All right, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for zooming in. Items referred from the Park and Recreation Board meeting. Discussion and consideration of a motion to approve the updated food truck policy.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelly Yogers. At the last Monday's Park and Rec Board, we re-looked at the food truck policy that is now called Village of Hartland's Parks Food Truck / Cater Policy. We approved this back in November 2019 Park and Rec Board. 2020, well, we all know what happened then. We didn't really get to use it that much. We dabbled with it here and there, but after getting some feedback from some businesses, one of our goals was to make sure businesses, organizations based in Heartland not have to pay for the food policy, but if a food truck or a business, they would have to pay for the food / cater policy as well. In here, when you arrived today to the board meeting, I put a copy of the changes that were made, and it was also in your weekly packet. Red was what I added. I didn't really take anything out, but until today, so I apologize. If you look, we struck out the Village of Hartland nonprofit organizations, clubs, and businesses that are in the village's tax key are not required to obtain a parks food truck / cater permit. We decided to change that to if the food provider is an organization, club, or business that is based in the Village of Hartland, they are not required to obtain a parks food truck / cater permit, because tax key is owning a business, owning property. But if Heartland Kiwanis comes in and does an event, they shouldn't have to be charged. Or like Lake Country Rotary, I believe they're helping out with the Heartland Chamber. They shouldn't be charged because they're a Heartland-based organization. But if Kona Ice, I'm going to use them because they come to some events, they're not Heartland-based. I believe they're in Cottonwood, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But if they come in, they should be charged. Our goal, Park and Rec's goal, is to have the event organizer possibly pay for that food permit. But our real goal, ideally, would be to use our Heartland businesses. When we have organizations that come in and want to do a special event or some type of catering, we always say, oh, the beer garden's there, or, you know, you could use one of our businesses. So hopefully that'll be a perk to help encourage people to use Otherwise, are there any questions?
I actually have a few.
Okay.
One of my questions is I understand about the $75 for the businesses that are here, but how does that affect Pat Enter, who owns the beer stand over there and sells food and has paid to do that?
Well, usually, if it's a private event, like say I have a shower and I come in and I bring in a Cotttonwood taco truck, it is only for my people, my event. I might say, okay, add the total bill at the end. You know, say all you guys go in, you get your tacos, you get your burritos, you get your enchiladas, and then give me the bill. Or everybody gets tacos, build your own tacos, and they come in and they build it. That's why. I mean, we definitely tell them about Pat, and they go to Pat. But open the public. That's why they come to us at Park Board and they present what they're doing. Because all these park permits, this park permit has to come to us, Park Board, for approval. And we have that $75, so because they are technically, if they do sell it to the public, which they shouldn't be, it should be to the event, they're, that's money that could be used for them versus an outside organization.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that you're going back through and looking for to update this policy.
Yeah, we found out there was kinks, and we wanted to make sure it was, appropriate. And
I do have a couple of recommendations. The portion of the where it says and I know you just changed it, so the part of that the village. I think that they should still fill out a permit. I think we'd want to know who's coming in and a permit that they have all the necessity stuff. Maybe it should be worded that we are waiving the fee if they're Village of Hartland rather than saying they don't need a permit. I still would like to see a permit.
Okay. Okay.
And then the line below the requirement you have that the food trucks and caterers must have prior approval from the Village Park and Recreation. So I would like to see on there that the final approval would come from the village board because we would have to approve the event. So I don't want people to come and think that because the park said, okay, we approve this, and then the event hasn't been brought forth to the board yet, and then it gets shut down.
What if it's like a wedding shower, baby shower?
We don't know the rentals that when you just do those small rental things. I'm talking larger events. Because we never know if you rent for a baby shower or whatever those things are, that doesn't come before us. So
do you want to start seeing those if it's a food? So you just want the big events.
The big events.
And then we do bring those to you. But we'll spell it out in here.
I'm saying on here. I want to see it on the form.
Because then we'll have to define what a big event is.
Just like
or like an idea.
Street dance enclosure and all the other fun stuff. We definitely need a little more defining of exactly what a large scale event is, what a small scale event is, and how the different procedures for it. I think that's where we're kind of getting lost a little bit.
Okay.
And that's all I had for it.
Okay. Well then is everybody okay if I revamp this and bring it back next time?
We didn't all go yet. Because I have a couple things.
Oh, okay, all right.
Sorry, I have one too.
I would like to see you bring it back.
Okay.
I'm not fully prepared to make a decision. I'm going to explain to the board and the public why, and this isn't on you or the park board. So back when when they originally came up with this, number one, this is a policy. It's not. Yeah. It's very difficult to enforce this by law. Yeah. Because it's a policy. It's not an ordinance. But along with that, when this originally came up, and it originated, if I'm not mistaken, the bid got involved, and this was while a lot of the food trucks were going to the Cotttonwood area, so people were like, oh my God, we got to do something. The reason that there's only a park policy is because at that time it was somewhat established that aren't allowed in Heartland except for in the park if you're having an event.
Yeah.
And I do feel that, I felt that it was, I think, I feel like it was very, very simple. There was, if someone was having an event, be it a birthday party or having a huge event like a party in the park or street dance, that a person could have, you know, whatever I think the limit was 2, but they could have food trucks come in and they could do that. And that was why the policy originally came from the park board. And now I feel like we're getting, you know, when we're talking about caterers here, and I understand if Palmer's is right from Heartland, but so now we're even getting to the point that, I mean, at what point do we, can Marty's come and set up, make a ton of sandwiches and bring them in if they were having a picnic for someone? Originally, the whole idea and the whole origination of this policy was because we didn't want to see a bunch of food trucks that weren't Heartland businesses all over the park. One parked in front of Beer Snobs, one parked in front of Enters, and one parked in front of Zesty. Okay, but now all of a sudden I just feel like we're really getting into some real serious, you know, caterers and.
I mean, if you guys want, I mean, you guys are the final decision. This is just recommendations from the park board, okay? So if you guys just want to just have this as a food truck policy, go for it. You know, just tell me and I'll cross off caterer and we can tweak it exactly how you guys want it. That's, you know, why we're here. So, yeah, we just kind of were addressing, you know, those who, you know, like the fire, like if you think of Heartland Kids Day, pizza. The trailer comes in, park. It's not really a food truck, but he sits up and he hands out the pizzas and everything. I mean, there is kind of a weird gray line on, okay, you know, what if a party wants to bring in that pizza place? It's not technically a food truck. He's not, you know, selling right out of his truck. But, you know, that's, even when there's a,
I hear what you're
it's
saying.
a,
I guess
it's
the
a
reason
great
I say
area.
caterers, you're not, I don't think that you will see. I don't think you will. I don't think you're going to see a caterer make a bunch of food and come and just set it up when no one's paid them to do it. I think food trucks will do it because they can sit there and just make them. I mean, we do caterers food in the room, but I won't call on them as I point to them. but there, I just don't. I mean, we're not. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the board wants something different. I don't think you're going to see someone make 100 people's worth of meals and bring them and just kind of set up shop.
I mean,
other than a food truck, if they brought them already made where they were going to sell ready-made meals, now you're selling out of a food truck. But they're not going to sell it cater style where it's like, okay, I've got the, you know, the chicken and the mashed potatoes.
We do have weddings, and I don't know what to extent. I can't, and I believe some of them will bring food in. Do they make it? I'm not sure, but
Kelly, what I'm saying is, if someone does want to rent out the park to have a wedding, I think they should be able to bring in a caterer. No permit needed. They're going to put that as part of their request to have that event through the park. What I'm saying is, no one's going to come and sell it like they would sell. No caterer is going to come and sell like they would sell a food truck.
okay, that's fine.
Like that's, I'm just throwing in my 2 cents. The board may disagree with me. I've never seen it in Heartland. I can't imagine it. I can't see it happening. I think a person would take too much of a loss. You know, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I have not seen it in Heartland or in Cottonwood or anywhere where a caterer just sets up and just starts selling meals. But if someone has a birthday party and they want to have
But that's
whoever.
like the same as the food trucks. Like when we have the food trucks come in, they're technically, you know, we have people that set up that says, hey, I have a taco food truck coming in and they're going to be selling tacos to my individuals. So that's, but
No.
I'll
You're right. A food truck's different. I'm saying, but in here it's talking about caterers.
yeah, we just kind of expand it to try to.
So if
you
someone
know,
paid for a permit to rent out a pavilion or rent a big portion of the park out and did have a wedding reception, let's say in the park. So they pay the village and they're like, okay, and my caterer is going to come and bring the food. We're going to be like, and you got to pay some more money because you're feeding your guests. But if you have 8 friends that bring their grills, they can do that and they can grill and sit there and grill and make, you know
or
what I'm
just
saying?
go to Pat.
Well, and they could. That's just my 2 cents. I think we're getting into some really
I'll
gray
do
areas.
whatever you guys want me to do. How's that?
Can I just ask for a clarification? So for catering, are you talking, so Kids Fest is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A came in and passed out food, so they just put a table in there, so it's not a food truck.
That's
They're
kind
not
of what
really
we're
catering,
thinking of,
it's
yeah.
that fine little thing where, I get it, it's a business that came in and was selling food there, so.
At their event, though.
At Kids Fest event, yes.
It doesn't, not everybody's gonna have the same opinion, I mean, I don't wanna,
We're thinking like, well, what if we have just somebody, like what if? Yeah,
was what,
like that.
you were at Bark, you saw Bark River Bash or heard about it. To me,
Yeah.
is that sorry, Robin, I know you, is that catering?
Well, we just didn't know what term to use, and the one that kind of came to me that was kind of clear was catering, where you set up food and you sell it. Like we had Creole, the coffee shop, come in and have coffee. We wanted to make sure that they were okay to be there selling coffee and selling coffee for the fundraising.
I'm sorry. I just have a question. So I see that you removed the Village of Hartland nonprofit organizations, club, businesses that are not in the village tax key are not required. Okay. So to me, that sentence read that if you are a nonprofit, you got that ability to waive the permit. But now it states if the food proprietor is an organization. So the Kiwanis isn't a food organization. So if the Kiwanis wanted to have I'm just trying to clarify, if the Kiwanis wanted to have the Bark River Bash, so now they would be responsible for getting food permits. Because they don't sell the food, and it says if the food provider is an organization. So are you saying like the Kiwanis doesn't have to because they're going to provide the food? But make sure make sure it's the food that's the Village of Hartland, and if it's not from the Village of Hartland, then you got to pay the permit.
Well, like for Rotary, they want to help out to sell food. We want them to be able to help out fundraise.
But if they don't use a Village of Hartland business, then they get charged.
No, it's because they're based in Heartland,
Like
under Rotary.
not based in Hartland, they get charged.
If they're not based, they
Then
get
they
charged, yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
The food provider or the group?
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to ask.
The group, because they're providing
Okay.
the food.
Okay.
That's why we're calling them the food provider.
Got it. So then they could use Chick-fil-A, and they wouldn't get charged. Just checking.
Sure they would, because Chick-fil-A's not a Heartland-based business.
So you're talking about whoever's.
That's what I'm trying to
bringing the
clarify, because it
food,
reads
not
both
the
ways. It's a
Kiwanis,
double
but-
negative in here. So that's, I think the president
Yeah.
making a point, and I would agree with your point, because this is reading double, right? So it's saying that, I'm gonna pick on the Kiwanis, I'm sorry if they're not here, so I'm gonna pick on a great organization. If the Kiwanis has an event in Nixon Park, and they decide they're gonna have food, and so we wouldn't charge them because they're a nonprofit organization and we get all the things, and they decide that they want to have food, but they go, I'm going to go with Chick-fil-A. Well, now we're going to charge them because Chick-fil-A isn't in the Village of Hartland.
Correct.
Chick-fil-A would be charged, right?
Yeah, Chick-fil-A would be charged,
Yep.
or Kiwanis could help pay for that. But if Kiwanis is going to Piggly Wiggly, buying the food and bringing it in, we wouldn't charge them. Like how they do the hometown
So if
celebration.
Kiwanis then decided to go to Chick-fil-A and buy 1,000 sandwiches, and then they brought the sandwiches in and passed them out, we wouldn't charge them.
Correct.
That's what I'm just trying to
Yeah.
clarify, because that's a lot of smoke and mirrors in my eyes.
I
So
think this
I
needs
do
some
think
more
it needs
time.
to
I
just be
really think This
reworked.
needs a lot more time. I think it was originally supposed
Yeah.
to be a food truck policy, and it's really going down, and it all came up with Bark River Bash. They showcased all the Heartland businesses, and they just wanted it Heartland businesses, but we're really getting down to, I mean, pretty soon we're gonna be talking about, I mean, if you sold hot dogs from a grocery store that's not in Heartland. It's,
I commend you, because I think you're going down the right path, because so what this tells me is there's a need, and more people are interested in having events and programs here
Correct.
in our municipality, so I'm all for that. So whatever help you need on this, I am happy. You're doing a great job, Kelly. I just think we're gonna get down a weird path. I think, like your suggestions and taking a look at it and maybe coming back to us, because I just don't want you to get stuck. LCYBS decides we're gonna take a bunch of sandwiches and then we're gonna sell them because I buy the sandwiches, you know what
Yeah, I get you.
Okay.
I just have a couple questions if you're done. Let's say the company that's doing it is this Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Is that each time they come for an event, or is that like an annual fee they pay?
Each time they come to the event.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then, this is just strictly for the park, this has nothing to do with food trucks on the roads?
Nope, this is just for
Just
the
for
parks.
the parks, okay.
Because we had more requests for food trucks coming in, and we just wanted to kind of protect our businesses. Like, hey, use our businesses and you don't have to worry about
What
this.
is the maximum right now, is it 2 or 3?
For what?
For the park, that can be in the park at one time?
We have 2, if. Board knowledge.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's all I had, thank you.
Yeah.
Per event.
Per event,
Per event.
yes.
Nonprofits.
So if you've got two different organizations holding an
Some of them
event in the park, technically there could be 4 food trucks then.
What about not?
Oh my God.
Just saying.
Yes.
For the whole event.
Sorry, Kelly.
That's okay, that's all right. That's all right.
I think we need more time with this, and I want to be able to come to you, which I will, and even maybe talk like with Tim Hallquist and talk with some of the other trustees, not for a walking quorum, but just to talk about where we really want to get it to, because I don't know, like the catering, I don't really like charging that. Like if someone's having an event, if they're selling food, that's different. When I hear catering, I'm not thinking of money changing hands. You paid $2,000 and they brought enough food for 100 people.
Because then, like, you gotta look
You
at
know.
food trucks. What if a food truck comes in and say, "Hey, I want 100 tacos. Can you come in and give me 100 tacos?" You know,
Yeah.
like that's
But
you know, that's I don't know. It's
Highly unlikely.
It's well, we do have people that we
They'll
have
just
that,
go to a condom walk and sell them.
or just use our businesses. So
Kelly, this is a
All
great
right.
stab, and it's a good
Okay.
read, so thank you.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Kelly.
Should we get a motion to postpone that, or?
I'll make a
should we
motion
just-
to postpone it.
I second.
Until we consult with the staff.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to postpone that. I'm gonna say for 1 month. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried. Take a day. The next item we have is discussion and consideration of a motion to approve an agreement with Enters for operation of the Lake Country. Administrator did a good job, I think, negotiating and working on this with Mr. Enter, and did discuss it with me. And we're looking at continuing the increase of, I think it's $10 per year. If anybody has any questions, not much is changing. Anybody have any questions or anything on the beer garden?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement with Enders. He's doing such a great job. for the
Second.
park.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the wonderful agreement that we have with Mr. Enter for the beer garden. Any discussion?
I just want to confirm, you said $10 per year, and on here it says $10 per weekend per year.
Per week,
Per week.
per year.
Because,
Okay.
yes.
I just wanted to confirm
Correct,
what you were saying. Okay.
correct. He makes,
Object to that.
no, thank you for the clarification. Thank you for the clarification.
Is there,
Hey, we just made it pretty easy on you, know?
it's open, doesn't matter what time of the year or anything?
No, the dates are specifically listed. He can open outside of that range as long as he contacts the village.
Yep.
And then it would kick back in as well for that time frame?
Yep.
Okay, because I was looking at winter, possible ice skating rink
Yep,
thing.
and that's the
It's-
wording we put in, because
Right.
the park board is taking a look
Right.
at possibly a ice arena.
Remember that?
No one's paying $5 a cup
Did you ever
for
go to it?
hot cocoa.
Did you have one there when you were little?
You do a great
Thank you.
job there,
Thank
Pat.
you.
Thank you very much.
And tell them we used to have an ice skating rink there when I was little, in the park.
In the park, but not on, we didn't do it on the park.
That was a long time ago.
Hey, when's the beer
They
garden
used to
opening?
flood the parking lot, and they had a
I
little,
remember that, I do. We used to take our kids there.
and they had bales of straw around
Yep.
it.
Okay, when is it opening?
May 27th, Memorial Day weekend.
Yay.
We did not vote yet, so I'm gonna call the question. If that's okay, if anybody has any, I was only kidding with you when I said okay, I just wanted to ask when it was open. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And for all the years that you've been doing it, it is good, great for Heartland. Thank you. I think the whole board means that. Now we have a presentation by the Heartland Fire Department in their annual report. It's my understanding this was distributed to the trustees, and copies are here for people that need them.
No, thanks.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Chief Dave Jambritz from the Hartland Fire Department. I'll start out with the letter on tab 1. So President Fanishtill, Village Board Trustees, Administrator Rhodey, Hartland Police and Fire Commission, which I will be at tomorrow night. So, will go down history as a year of change and many firsts for our service. In the first few months as interim chief, I never envisioned having to navigate through a nationwide pandemic, change how we operate as fire and EMS providers, conduct business virtually, and rebuild our service. During all this transition, we successfully answered 979 calls for service, rebuilt our chain of command, provided a modified in-person fire prevention program, turned into a COVID testing center for Waukesha County Police and Fire, and provided Versity Blood Center of Wisconsin the space to hold blood drives due to the shortage of blood during the pandemic. We have opened the lines of communication with our neighboring departments and continue to work together for a common goal of providing the best outcome for our patients and residents. We continue to train together as those opportunities are presented to us. The dynamics of our neighboring Western Fire District took over fire and EMS service in the town of Merton and Oconomowoc. As of January 1, 2021, Lake Country Department took over the town of Delafield and Wales Genesee Fire Departments. I shouldn't make it sound so bad. It wasn't a takeover. They were all well-intentioned. So as we look to the future planning of our department, we are at max sleeping and living personnel. We'll have to look at expansion or replacement of the station in the future. Our SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, are at their end of life per the NFP as of 2022. We will need to replace 30 units, which are estimated to cost around $270,000. We have applied for a grant for replacement of the expiring SCBAs and are currently waiting to see if we are awarded the funds. We will continue to work with the administration on tightening up our budget process and make sure that we are transparent in our needs and spending. Staffing is always an issue. Position full-time departments. We have been getting a great turnout for daytime calls as many members are still working from home and able to respond. As the county continues to lift restrictions, we continue to train with our neighboring departments and the Hartland Police Department with the goal of we strive to give our customers the highest quality of care and in closing, I thank the Village Board, Village President, Village Administrator, the Police and Fire Commission, Police Department, and the DPW for their continued support of our department. Respect. Tab 2 just runs through our calls. We were 8 calls down last year. As of right now, I just checked the numbers. We are 21 calls positive over last year's. So picking that back up. Second shows the Merton, our town of Merton contract calls that we have. So 58 fire, or 58 EMS, 15 fire, for a total of 73 out of those 979 calls. Chart on the next page just shows those calls in chart form. Tab 3 is our staffing changes as of January of 2020. We hired paramedic Cajal Sharp, joined the department as of March, and firefighter paramedic Amy Maddox was promoted from part-time to full-time in April. Cajal was with us previous. He moved to Texas for family issues and then was able to come back to us. He is now my division chief of EMS, and he rocks the EMS world for us. So, change in the command. Obviously, Chief Dean retired, and I became the interim chief effective on 3/2. We had 5 officers that resigned or retired between February and March of 2020. As the interim chief, I recruited 4 of the 5 officers back to service after he became interim chief. 10/13, I was made the full-time chief by the Police and Fire Commission. Apparatus and equipment that we sold at auction last year was our old ambulance 4351. 8 old radios and 4 tires. We received an SUV from the Hartland Police Department, and that's our acting chief vehicle at this time, so we call it our 10 vehicle. So all of the chiefs that respond when I don't have to or when I'm not around take that vehicle home with them. Protective gear could expose firefighters to PFAS, so everybody's heard about the PFAS in the future. So our gear is covered with it. That's the water repellency of it. So New study showed that fluorinated compound and water-resilient textiles break down over time, contacting the skin and shedding into the environment. Cancer in the fire service has been linked to PFAS exposure such as testicular cancer, prostate cancer, mesothelioma, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So what we're doing to take care of this, we are limiting the use of our foam. We removed old foam with PFAS and added non-PFAS foam to our trucks. Members cannot leave gear in their car anymore. They must be in an enclosed container or zip-up carrying bag when transporting gear to school or using it on duty as a first responder. Gloves must be worn and used when handling the gear and putting it in the washer. We wash our gear after every fire. Equipment contracts. I established maintenance contracts for the equipment listed below that are housed in each of the ambulances. Our 2 monitors, our 2 Lucas devices, the number 2 and the number 3, and our 2 Stryker cot systems. Equipment received were our Summit Hospital presented 2 new defibrillators to HPD and to us. We received a $3,000 donation from the homeowner to purchase a pump for pumping operations over on Beaver Lake. And then we requested $1,600 from our association to make up that difference. So that pump pumps 630 gallons a minute from the lake and can fill our tanks in areas where we can't get a lot of equipment. So mutual aid agreement changes. Lake Country Fire Department mutual aid. They are no longer charging us $450 for a paramedic intercept fee. So we share services with them in like our Highway 83 corridor. Some new areas on the east side of the village that we respond to at the same time they do. Again, the agreement there is just to get the best, or the personnel there the fastest to help the people. So we turn the call over to them. So Town of Merton has agreed to a 1-year fire and EMS contract with us. Again, we serve about 1,800 residents in the town of Merton. As you can see, they're dispersed on Merton Avenue, North Avenue, and then along Highway K up to about Rybeck Road. So we changed over to unit dispatching. So we moved, our apparatuses are dispatched out by unit and according to the type of 911 call that is received. Unit dispatching will allow us to have less radio traffic and clear communication on what apparatus needs to go out the door. So this was Division Chief Walker's baby. He did this first one pretty much on his own. And I worked with him because I had no clue on how it worked either. So there were 300 pages of cards and 600 different call types that needed to be filled out for dispatch. So everything from a split finger needing a Band-Aid to a major structure fire. And then each unit then gets dispatched according to that call type. Well, we got that all done, and dispatch notified us in November that they were changing the way they call types to 500 pages of cards and 1,300 call types. So luckily we had this base and we just kind of moved things around. So we added a new 5, and that's pretty much the town of Merton. So we had worked with the Waukesha County Land Information System and Waukesha County Communications to add that Zone 5. And all that does is gets us tankers a lot faster, tenders and water trucks instead of engines and stuff like that. So pandemic changed the way we do business. Daily afternoon COVID briefings with Waukesha County chiefs via teleconference. Instituted new procedures for entering the station during the pandemic. We limited the general public to the station if they were shift. Any first responder coming from home must be screened before the start of their shift. Vendors would need to be screened if they must enter. Most were being met at the door and leaving the boxes outside. Working with our neighboring departments on plans in case of staff shortages. Our second ambulance, 4352, had been designated as our COVID patient transport, which thankfully we never had to use. So, incident action plan is now in place with our neighboring departments. We were using computer software, I Am Responding, to see what all of our staffing levels were. Software shows each department's staff qualifications, etc. If calls started to stack up, the other departments will be on hand to assist us, or we were just the opposite, to assist with them. Effective immediately, dispatch will direct callers to move towards the door and to eliminate the need for our responders to enter the building or the resident. Ultra violation decon unit. It was in our Survive Live house and still is. It was for deconning N95 masks back when there were shortages of that. Violet light. Safer at home order. Our officer and business meetings are canceled, as well as any hands-on training during the Safer at Home order. In-person meetings and trainings resumed in June of 2020. We have our online training app that we used, so it was available to all of our members during the pandemic. All events were canceled, our fundraisers, the extrication fundraiser, and the pancake breakfast. Fire inspections were permitted to be postponed during the emergency declaration without losing any of our 2% dues. So we finished those in March on the deadline, and then are starting over now for all fire inspections in the village to be completed once per calendar year versus the 2 which were in place before, and our fire inspections resumed in September. COVID testing, we started conducting COVID-19 testing for police and fire staff in the county. Station changes. Painting was completed in my office, our watchroom, and our administrative office. We had a hand-painted mural of our logo on the front hallway across from the restroom, and we finalized bids for kitchen and watchroom upgrades, new dorm space, and doors for the dorm room and administrative office. Nobody wants to see the next picture, but so in rebuilding our chain of command, we instituted a process where officers that wanted to move up or wanted to become officers were interviewed by our county chiefs and then had an interview in front of the Police and Fire Commission. And then we made promotions on those recommendations. So we had a pinning ceremony on 7/24 of 2020. Division Fire Peter Walker, Division Chief of EMS Cajal Sharp, Fire Captain Randy Gilmore, Fire Lieutenant Jason Elger, EMS Lieutenants Jonathan Quint and Shannon Carroll. We established an available officer sign-up for evenings during the week, as well as a chief officer. So there's a chief officer and at least a lieutenant on every night. So our hiring process was kind of a mess when I started. We established a hiring committee. So the candidate usually gets interviewed by a chief officer and myself. Just a quick interview. We do a background check. And then they go to our hiring committee. We have a chairperson, one of our chief officers, the scheduling coordinator, a secretary, and 3 additional members, so up to 7 members for that. Panel interview, then the hiring committee recommends to me whether they move on to the Police and Fire Commission. So we pretty much have everything in place by the time they get to the PFC. So we set up a recruitment brochure and designed and had it printed. So the next page is our flow chart for our. We still have the assistant chief open, and we'll be looking to fill that in the future. And then just pictures of the. So our billing, ambulance billing and annual billing report, received from our LifeQuest billing company. We are 86.9% of our payments received in the first phase of billing. So and Medicare insurance companies. Second phase is we're 5.82% of payments received in this phase, and that's our soft collections. And then the rest are collected, 7.28% of the payments received in phase 3 billing. Phase 3 is the hard collections. So we pride ourselves on the fact that Julie, my administrative from our EMTs, and if there's something wrong that doesn't pass her muster, they get it back to rewrite it, and then goes to our billing company. So all of that, it's word changes that they have to make, and how a patient was moved to the cot, how a patient was transported, all that stuff that Medicare looks at and says, no, we're not paying it because they didn't need to be transported. So she's really good at it, and we're one of the tops in the area that on our collections. So member certifications. So we had people in class. We sponsored a motor pump operator class. Myself, Chief Sharp, Amy Maddox, and Jim Wren took the class and all passed. Fire inspector, Lieutenant Conan. Emergency services instructor, Lieutenant Conan. Fire officer, Lieutenant Conan. Firefighter 2, Lieutenant Carroll and Eric Roos. Paramedic, Nick Kajak and Allison Vel. Demetrius and Jordan Quant. CPR and ACLS and PALS instructor, myself and Amy Maddox for ACLS and PALS, and our CPR instructors were Division Chief Sharp, Lieutenant Quint, Heather Schmidt, Nick Kajak, and Lieutenant married attending. The class ran from May through August. We got into a contract with MATC to precept paramedic students. So we have two paramedics, because they have more than 2 years of service as a paramedic. So Lake Country Fire and BLS training contract went into effect on 10/1. So we precepted their basic training students. We had such great reviews from the students that they just called us and said we'd like to continue that through our summer program. So there were some really cool kids in that program, and we tried to get a couple of them to join. So just goes through the certifications that were achieved. So for our fire prevention program, we used to do it in our classroom, and obviously with the Safer at Home order and then all of the other stuff, we didn't want to went outside. We did pretty much everything outside. We did fire prevention at Nixon Park for 22 of Kelly Yoger's campers. Did fire prevention at Lake Country Childcare with 23 students in August. In October, we did Zion Lutheran School, where we went to their school. Fire prevention for Divine Redeemer, they came to us. Fire prevention for Swallow, and then fire prevention for St. Charles and Hartland North. Total of 644 students we did. Our trainings, so we have our doctor, Dr. Westlake, who's our medical control doctor, come out usually once every other month and do QIs with us. So just run over a run report, pick out a couple of run reports. He goes through them, what can we improve on, what did we do great on, and all that kind of stuff. So just helps us improve our services. Did our ice rescue training, Nagawicca boat launch, RIT training with Lake Country Fire Station 2. That's rapid intervention. That's our firefighters saving our own firefighters. So hazmat emergency response guides at the City of Waukesha Station. Lake 5 Road house burn with the Lisbon Fire Department, officer, tender, and engine that were requested and went. We did our Lakewood house burns, the one in June and then the one later on in August. We did a bunch EMS Jeopardy, EMS drill, patient movement. We used one of the Lakewood houses. We did head injury, OB emergencies, chest pain, and vehicle extrication. Operators are driving in Wisconsin weather conditions. So all of our online training was completed for fire and EMS every month when we couldn't meet in person. Public education. We did CPR trainings for 20 community members, 8 St. Charles ushers on 2 different dates. And then we did CPR training for Hartland Police Department, the DPW, and any administrative staff. Summer. We had a couple students that came in for CPR training. Completed Lake Country Lutheran High School. We had 17 teachers and coaches that came in on 2 different shifts for that training. CPR to HFD staff, so we do that every 2 years for all of our firefighters and EMS personnel. We had 2 Carroll College nursing students come in, and then we had another 20 Lake Country Lutheran teachers that we taught CPR to and coaches. So, public relations, as you can read through some of these, Tiger Scouts come in through and do fire prevention videos. This was before the pandemic. Engine crew requested to attend a remission party at the Hartland North for Andrew, who was 4-year-old. 2nd grade Brownies first aid training at Hartland North, 15 students. 2 EMT troop handle emergencies, 17 girls. HFD reserved the classroom for the Optimist Club, who hosted 7 True Grit winners with guest speaker Brian Anderson, American sportscaster who calls play-by-play for the Brewers. Lance Allen from Channel 12 was present after the meeting to interview Brian Anderson. We did a chili judging contest at Hooray Selector Night. Participated in over 20 birthday parades for the residents of Heartland during the Safer at Home order. Saturday evening at 1900, we participated on 11th. Arranged our vehicles up in the Arrowhead parking lot in the shape of a heart and lit them up to honor all healthcare workers. We posted it on our Facebook page with the hashtag Hearts for Healthcare. Class of 2020 fashion design student from our area was interviewed for the show Matter of Fact with Soledad O'Brien for masks she was making for healthcare providers. Dr. Westlake, our medical control director, myself, and Shannon were interviewed and taped for the show. Cost me a lot of ice cream. 4/17/20 was senior night lights. All of our apparatus in our fleet light up in honor of graduating class of 2020 at Arrowhead. 4/22/20, participating in honoring the staff at the local hospitals with a drive-by parade by each facility. All fire departments in the area will be participating depending on call volume and their station location. So we sent an engine with a light crew, and they participated in the parade. They hit all 3 hospitals that we use, Waukesha, Oconomowoc, and Summit. And then we were requested for the Town of Merton chairman requested mutual aid partners to participate in a birthday parade for a resident LMA who turned 102 years old. Yeah.
103 yesterday.
Yeah. She is something else.
She is. She goes to our church.
She looks like she's 80.
Yeah.
I know.
North Shore Middle School graduation parade, 4th of July fireworks, engine and ambulance crew that staged. We had our truck wash and hometown celebration for the hometown celebration parade. Heartland street dance, ambulance crews staged, and then a truck display showcase out at Fleet Farm, 4371, and the ladder truck from, I believe it was Jefferson, held up the big American flag out there. Engine was out on the pad for birthday photos for a 4-year-old, and then we participated with 71 for them. And then we did the public 5K Lake Country Lutheran campus. Our ambulance staged at a bunch of sporting events, HS Wrestling Club tournament, HS cross country meet, varsity football for Lake Country Lutheran and Arrowhead High School. And then we did the stuff the truck and fill the boot for the holiday train. We did 2 escorts, AHS boys volleyball team to state and the AHS varsity football escort to a couple of their games. They weren't having a state this year, but they asked if we would support them that way. We had blood drives on 5/23, 10/10, 11/14, and 12/9, and we continue to work with Versity to give them a place to do the blood drives. Just some pie charts and different ways that we did our fire prevention, and then some pictures of our lake house burn. Some memorable calls for 20. We had the chimney fire on Hill Street. Mutual aid we received from Town of Delafield, Western Lakes, Merton Community, Lake Country Fire Department, and Wales Genesee. On 12/4, we had the search and rescue for a missing resident without proper clothing from inclement weather. Took that to the second box alarm. We had the following companies reported to staging: Lake Country Fire and Rescue, Town of Delafield Fire Department, Western Lakes Fire Department, Merton Community Fire Department, Wales Genesee Fire Department, Lisbon Fire Department, Pewaukee Fire Department, Sussex Fire Department, City of Waukesha Fire Department, and Town of Brookfield Fire Department. We had 6 ATVs, 4 ambulances, 4 engines, and 41 total personnel. Christmas Day structure fire on East Imperial, and then we had a fatal drowning of a pediatric patient. We scheduled a critical incidents trustee briefing at HFD. We had the sheriff, fire, police that all responded to the scene of that incident. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yes,
Very
this is
thorough.
really
Putting
good.
that together.
Thank you
Good
for
job.
Dropping it off. At this time, we have a presentation. Thank you very much, Chief. We have a presentation of Hartland Police Department and their annual report.
Good evening, Torrin Misko, Chief of Police, Hartland Police Department. I'm going to try to just give a real high overview snapshot of what we have at the Hartland Police Department for 2020. When I was walking up here, I noticed Ryan giving me that look that he wanted to get home to his family tonight, so I had to keep this thing on point and keep her moving. So the first page has some very enlightening words from myself. I'm not going to read those verbatim for you. You guys can definitely do that. But it just gives a real high-level overview of what we have as a police department. But then on page 2, we get into some of the highlights. So these are just some of the notable events that happened for us. And you're going to see that a lot of these are very generally stated, but took up a lot of our time. And we'll point through those. But when we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, when we kept coming out with different orders and unprecedented issues that came through that, we had to adapt, pivot, and continue to move forward and try to interpret these things as we went. So although that's a mere sentence on this highlight, that was a lot of our time in 2020. So I don't want you guys to think just because it's very narrowly worded that it wasn't a problem. But starting at the top, we actually had a major undertaking. FBI requires us to do criminal statistic reporting every year. For years and years and years, we used something called Uniform Crime Reporting, or UCR, and we transitioned to a new system called Incident-Based Reporting, or IBR. As simple as that sounds, it was nothing but complicated, especially when you talk about federal bureaucracy and software that goes along with it. Definitely not an easy challenge. Our clerical staff definitely rose to us to the point where we actually had other municipalities coming to learn from our staff and help them through this transition, because it was a huge undertaking. Another issue thing that we worked through, that we got some funding in previous years that we were actually able to get and go live, was our live scan electronic fingerprint device. So we went away from the antiquated process of capturing ink fingerprints, and now we're actually doing it digitally. What that allows us to do is right away we know if it's a good print or not. It will analyze it immediately and give us some feedback. Not that we have to now mail this in, have the crime lab look at it and say, guess what, you need to get more new. But now we're actually even capturing more sides of the palms, people putting palms down. We can actually capture that and identify people through that, actual palm prints, and then also electronic mugshots. So a very more effective and efficient way of doing business. One of our administrative assistants, Lori Barr, she has attended property room training. So we had a prior administrative going to the evidence we collect. It's a very daunting task. It's a very specialized task. So we were able to actually get her through a property room management course, and she has taken over as our property room manager. Again, this is one of those issues that is a couple sentences here on our annual report, but really took a lot of time for us to work through, both physically and mentally. But we had that unfortunate officer-involved shooting incident in the city of Delafield, where obviously one of our officers and one of the city of Delafield officers sustained non-fatal gunshot wounds. And again, if I could take a moment and thank all of you for coming and supporting that officer in the recent award ceremony. It really meant a lot to him, the city of Delafield officers. And if I could share a quick story, for me, our officer involved, his mom actually came up to me and had a conversation with me after the ceremony and said there was really no way she ever wanted her son to come back to doing police work after what he went through with this shooting. And after that event, she was able to come to terms and was actually okay with her son coming back to serving on the police department. So that's how powerful something like that was for his family. Definitely meant a lot to him. Again, adapted to all the changes and challenges that came with the COVID-19 pandemic, constant new ground that we are trying to work through that none of us have ever seen before, working with our partners in the fire service, working with our partners at the emergency management level, trying to figure out actually what was going on and how we should respond and what was the most appropriate way of going about it. And then obviously working through the leadership of the board here and how we handled things locally. We had a major change to constitutional law. This is Marcy's law. This is a crime victim advocacy law. So this was actually not just a state statute put into effect, it was an actual constitutional amendment. And while this is very well deserved for our crime victims, I think crime victims should have the same rights as our criminals. It made a lot of different processy changes for us at the police department and privacy issues. So you think open records, we have a lot more policy changes that we had to work through to be in compliance for. This also carried over from the previous year. We did some fundraising efforts for that armored rescue vehicle. Well, we were actually able to put that order in and procure that piece of equipment. And I can't say that the timing wasn't better. As you can imagine, in the world of police reform and civil disobedience, that resource came in handy more than once throughout the year last year. It was really a great tool for us to work through those issues. One of our part-time administrative assistants, Cindy Gardner, she left her position to take on a position with the federal government. Captain Stacy Kelsey, there should be an L there, and Officer Nick Greenwood and Officer Jorgensen all received life-saving awards last year for their involvement in saving an individual's life that was experiencing a drug overdose. So they were able to administer Narcan and in some cases provide CPR. So Officer Greenwood and Captain Kelsey, they were actually on one incident. Officer Jorgensen actually was on a whole separate incident, and they were literally a couple weeks apart. So and that was right in the beginning of the pandemic. We saw an uptick of overdose response and Narcan deployment. And then kind of going back to my other point of the civil disobedience, we have two officers that are on our Waukesha County Civil Disturbance Unit, and those units stayed very busy throughout last year, both in Milwaukee County with the Milwaukee Police Department, Wauwatosa Police Department, as you can imagine, and then Kenosha when they had their incident. And then even here in Waukesha County, we stayed busy between different protests throughout the county, including even putting that unit on standby for one of our own events. So they were here locally in Heartland to support our mission if needed. So those are just some of the real high-level highlights. Obviously not going into individual calls for service. We respond to a lot of those, and we'll get into some of the statistics on that near the end of the report. If you go to the next page, we talk through some of our cooperative efforts, and this is how we really bring an efficient product to the Village of Hartland. We work on a lot of different multi-jurisdictional teams, and some of those are listed here, but some of the big ones are our training unit. All the Lake Country area police departments, we train together quarterly. We not only are able to then share certified instructors, which is quite a process to be certified and then remain certified in the state of Wisconsin. We share those costs and expertise, but then we also share training with each other. And as you can imagine, mutual aid occurs. And now when we're all coming off the same sheet of music, the same training, it's a seamless process, whether it's all Heartland officers, Heartland Delafield, Shaniqua Delafield, we're able to really interchange and work well together. Some of those other major units are Suburban Critical Incident Team. That's that 9-agency multi-jurisdictional SWAT team. We have our Major Investigations Unit. This is made up of several departments in the area that if we have any type of major investigation, at moment's notice, we can put a call in. We have mutual aid agreements, and we can get investigators working and moving forward quickly. A major event that we worked on recently is a couple years ago, the village of Pewaukee had a homicide. That was a major investigation unit call. Call went out. At the pieces on a thing that just had so many different aspects to it that any one organization, any one agency would have been quickly overwhelmed on. Our suburban mutual aid response team is more higher level. A lot of these you saw agreements come through in the last year or two where we actually updated our mutual aid agreements. But SMART was one of those. This is more on a regional basis. So think major call, natural disaster, major civil disturbance issue where we need people fast. We can put out a call, and entire southeastern Wisconsin's part of this, where we have recorded response cards. So different agencies respond to us, and we actually can get up to 70 different law enforcement officers literally with one call to dispatch. So it works out real well when needed. A lot of these, and then the civil disturbance unit is the last one I wanted to talk to. That's one near and dear to my heart. I had a lot on creating that unit when we started that just a couple short years ago. And I could just say, wow, without it, I don't know really where we would have been this past year and a half. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen. A lot of these other units we've been a part of for a long time. I don't want to read through each one of them, but they're all different collaborations that we work through that just provide the best level of public safety to the Village of Hartland. And we want to continue those partnerships to provide that level of service. So I'm just going to quickly through those. If you to the paid, we just like sharing that where we. Again, not going to read that for you verbatim, but if you go to the next page, it does a full breakdown of what our police department looks like in 2020 and what our hierarchy is. So starting with myself, Deputy Chief Kalura, that breaks down. We have Captain Kelsey, who is in charge of our early team officers, and you'll see the list of them. We have Lieutenant Brian DeBarge, who's oversight of our late team officers. You'll see the list of those officers. Deputy Chief Kalura and I work together to oversee then, obviously, not only the entire department as a whole, but our administrative team, which is our administrative professionals, our investigative team, and then our day team patrol officers. And they're all listed there with when they started their service in the Village of Hartland. Some of these officers had prior law enforcement experience before joining Hartland. And then as you page through, we actually give you what who's who, get to know our local police department. These are all the same photographs that we have up on in our department lobby. But it starts with our management team. You'll see photos of each of us and our positions. Next page is our investigative team, Detective Hoffa and Jewel. Moving on to our day team, the officer on the top is who the village president just read the proclamation for, Officer Jorgensen, who would have had 33 years of service come this September. Early team, our 4 officers assigned there, and then finally our lay team officers. We have 3 officers assigned to lay team. And then another page full of data is our activity report. And in years past, we had it done a little different. I took some time, and I really wanted to capture some of our data points that are our time drivers and what we spend a lot of our time on. You're going to see there was a slight decrease in calls for service. I really amount a lot of that to some of the changes we put in place till we understood what the actual COVID-19 was and what we were dealing with. A big piece of that was traffic enforcement. We really pulled back our traffic enforcement. We eliminated grants for a period of time, and then we also were looking for only essential type traffic stops where they were reckless or endangering safety, like clearly, just because we didn't know what we were dealing with when the pandemic first came on. And if you see our calls for service, they're down, from 12,761 calls for service in 2019 to 12,000. And if you go down to our traffic contacts, our very next line, that almost is where you're making up that difference, is that 400 or so less traffic contacts we had, and a lot of that, like I said, could be contributed to the pandemic and some of our response efforts until we had a handle on what we were dealing with. But we worked through, obviously, traffic citations, traffic accidents were pretty stable. Ordinance citations, that's anything other than traffic, like your disorderly conduct, theft, criminal damage to property, things of those nature. Parking citations, drunk driving arrests. Back in 2018, our dispatch center started doing entry called school checks. That's something we pay a lot of attention to. All day team officers are instructed to get through their schools on every single school day. We want them to be with the school layout if there were ever to be.
I'm sorry that I gotta stop you. I gotta run out for a minute.
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
got to. Sorry. Sorry, Chief.
Our staff to be familiar with the staff at the school and familiar with all the layouts of the school. So if we ever had a major incident, it wasn't like we were learning who the staff are or where we're going, things of that nature.
Into the school and walk
Yep.
through?
So driving around the school, that doesn't count. That's garbage. They got to get out of their car, get in the school, walk through the school. We want to know where the gym is, the library is, the different numbered classrooms are, so that if we get a call of a critical incident and they're saying, hey, they're in the cafeteria, I don't want any of the officers at the Hartland Police Department saying, well, where's the cafeteria at Hartland South? They better know where it is so we can respond immediately. I think in this day and age, the expectation is the community wants the police department to be there, and they want there to be there quick. Statistically, the quicker we confront the bad guy with a gun or something of that nature. And then another new item I added is well-being checks. That's not something we had previously captured, but you're going to see there's quite a few of them. And even one well-being check can last for over an entire shift for a police officer. So it just depends on what we're dealing with. But when we're talking medical clearance, transport, it could be to Winnebago Mental Health Center. You're talking hours, sometimes days worth of time for that one well-being check. So I really want to try to capture that and show it just takes a lot of our time and our officers off the street for quite a period of time. Something I've been working on very closely with not only our state legislature, just this past Wednesday actually, but also with our Waukesha County Mental Health Center, trying to figure out ways we could become more efficient and more effective, because I do think there's definitely some areas we can improve on when it comes to mental health. But then a lot of the other stats are pretty common for what we've done in years past. So if there's no questions, I'll quickly breeze through those. And then our last page just captures, we obviously are going to get complaints doing police work. People aren't always happy. They're not calling us because they're having a good day. We had 3 complaints in 2020. There is an asterisk there because if you read like, well, why don't the numbers actually equal 3 with what's substantiated and what's not? 2 of those complaints were from the same individual who also filed a lawsuit against the Village of Hartland that was quickly dismissed with prejudice and with court costs for the petitioner. And he had multiple different aspects. So even though it was only 2 complaints filed, he was saying multiple different things. Some of those were unfounded, some of those were exonerated, and then some of those were just not substantiated. It was something he talked about that happened years ago, and there's no way I can figure out if it actually happened or not. So I can't say it didn't happen, I can't say it did happen. That's where the not substantiated comes in. So out of those 3, 2 were from one person with multiple different aspects. The other was during an issue where someone was issued a citation and they weren't happy with the citation. As you can imagine, the proper venue for that is our municipal court. People aren't going to be happy on it sometimes when you issue them a citation. I got to do my part of the job. So really nothing major when it comes to complaints, but then you'll see the amount of people that took time out of their day where they didn't have to and then complimented either the police department or a particular officer. Pretty much the entire agency was complimented in one way or another. And this is from individuals that we arrested, cited, that are actually taking the time saying, thank you for helping me change my life around. I deserve that, things of that nature. And it's just really powerful to see that they didn't have to take the time to actually put that together, but they were willing to do it. So it's always good when they're willing to take the time to say we do good work than when they're willing to take the time to say they're not happy with our work. So that's what that last page captures, and then just a collage of different events that we were at throughout the city, either incident-based or community relation-based. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Chief.
Very nice done.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is a consideration of a motion to approve contractor applications for payment number 3 in the amount of $12,932.30 to CW Papero Inc. for the Nixon Pond Dredging Project. Mr. Felkner.
Dave Felkner, Utility Supervisor. CW Papero is seeking a payment for the work completed at the Nixon. Some great work, seeding and erosion matting. We'll bring them back to finish that work in September. So staff right now is recommending a payment of $12,000. CW appropriated for the.
I'll move that we approve payment number 3 for the Pearl.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to pay for the dredging to prepare CW Papero Inc.
Clean slime that's on the river edge.
That's on the sandbags, so that's
No.
that came from the trees.
I don't know, it's just green slime on the edge of the river.
I will look into it.
I was just wondering if that is ever taken. Sorry.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion is carried. The next item we have is consideration of a motion to approve the, thank you, Mr. Faulkner, to approve the 2022 budget preparation schedule.
Nope, skipped one. Sorry,
missed
13.
one.
Sorry,
skip
I'm
one.
crossing stuff off too fast. I skipped, sorry, it's getting late. Liquor store's about to close. The next item we have is consideration of a motion to award the 2021 slurry seal program to Farner Asphalt Sealers LLC in the amount of $59,316.
So the village put out proposals for a slurry program. This program consists of East Industrial, Terrace Lane, Tenney Lane, and the Woodlands subdivision. We had two proposals that came in. Low $59,316. Unfortunately, there's really only two companies that do this work, so we didn't get the third proposal. So staff recommends awarding the 2021 slurry program to Farner Asphalt Sealers in the lump sum of $59,316.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 slurry seal program to Farner Asphalt Sealers LLC in the amount of $59,316.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award that slurry seal program to Farner Asphalt Sealers LLC in the amount of $59,316. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Did anyone have any discussion? I'm sorry. No, okay. That motion carries. The next item we have is consideration of a motion to approve the 2022 budget preparation schedule.
Hello, Ryan Bailey, Finance Director again. Attached is the preliminary schedule. We just threw the dates that we've done in the past. This is a borrowing year, so we will have a CIP meeting with Rugert and Milky if Ryan's still in the audience. We'll have to start working on that. But yeah, that's just some of the dates, very similar to what we've done in the past. If you see anything, I mean, again, we can approve it tonight, but we can always change it in the future. I'm just trying to make sure there's no dates that are going to be a horrible choice or anything of that nature. So those are just the dates that we have for the budget.
I make the motion that we approve the 2022 budget preparation schedule.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the schedule for the budget preparation for 2021. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion is carried.
Thank you.
The next item we have is discussion and possible action regarding municipal attorney services RFPs that were received and the presentations that were conducted at the special village board meeting on May 6th.
I'd like to make a recommendation that you will listen to all the presentations. One presentation that was for a company that she was no longer with, and which was kind of misunderstanding. The biggest thing that came out of it is that we're not really hiring a company, we're hiring an attorney. And we're getting just an attorney. And the problem we had with the current setup is with the attorney we had would bring in other people from his group that treated us so condescendingly, it was just disgusting. So what I would recommend is that we stay with our current attorney for the projects that he's working on for the village. And anything outside of the problems or the projects that he's working on now is that we go outside and pick an attorney to handle those particular projects so that we're not still using from the group of people that we weren't really happy with. And Kathy's presentation was very good, and I could see her being advantage to using her in different things. But I think that we should look at just as an individual attorney, stay with what we have right now.
Can you clarify? Are you saying for any new items not to use?
Any new items that we can discuss, that we can go outside of, we don't have to stick with our current.
But we have the option to.
We have the option to do it, but we can go outside if we want to.
Okay, so like when the administrator or if a trustee or someone's calling on, even though it may be a new thing, I suppose I can wait for discussion. I'll let you make the motion.
No, I think we stick with what the attorney we have, and if we comes up with another concern, that we have the option of going outside of and picking another attorney to handle that particular problem.
Okay.
So, President Faniso, I would actually really be interested because I know that originally this was scheduled different. So I kind of wish we could have gone back on to Thursday when we originally did this to ask more questions then. I was under the impression that it was going to be a little bit different handling tonight. So I'm kind of looking for your input on this, of your feelings.
What was gonna be different?
Going
it was
into
closed?
close, correct.
Yeah, so with closed session, in looking to it, it's not, we're not given that ability or exemption, as they call it. So it was on as closed session. I looked into the item. I got the opinion that it wasn't okay to go into closed session, so I even got a second opinion. And that was from Claire Silverman at the League of Municipalities. She said, you don't fall within the exemption. We're not negotiating, we're not budgeting, we're not hiring an employee. You just don't, there's only certain exemptions that you have. And while this one is somewhat confusing, she just did not believe, according to the Attorney General's guidance, they have a whole thing on open meetings, that it just didn't go into there. And she said, at the very worst, err on the safe side, and don't go into closed session, because she didn't see a way of doing that. So I had gotten the two opinions, and at that time, got in contact with the administrator and said, I think we gotta change it, so.
Okay.
That's how that came to be.
Right, and I'm just a little curious of why that wasn't noticed on Thursday when we were doing that outline was already sent to us, so.
I hadn't gotten any opinion on it at all. I assumed that was just fine. I guess that's on me for assuming, but I mean, I did catch it before the meeting, corrected it, and called, got that advice, and I don't know what the item for the presentation was in open. I mean, the decision-making process, unless the public can't know something, or it would hurt the village for, but everything else was done in the open. The RFPs were collected with the prices, that was in the open. Presentations were in the open. And with that being done also, that was part of that decision that it probably wouldn't have been best to go into closed session. If it was an employee that was being hired, there's certain things that they have those, 8 exemptions, but that was when I had gotten the opinion, and then when I called the League of Municipalities, that's when I said, all right. Did we get a second?
No.
I didn't think so.
One question I guess I have to Trustee Mike is, I guess I'm a little confused of how we go about the process. So if it's anything that's current, I get that, but if it's something new, then instead of just contacting the attorney that we hired, now we gotta come to a meeting and decide what firm we wanna do moving forward. I mean, we gotta always be talking what firm for this or that. That seems a little cumbersome in my opinion. So I guess I want a little clarification why we want to stick with who we have now for any current ones, but then open it up for a new attorney on all new things. I mean, and we're not saying one specific firm, so we got them to begin with. Anything new, we're going with attorney number 2, but it's open up to anybody. So every time we're going to be negotiating new attorneys left and right, so we can have 6 different attorneys taking care of 6 different cases.
Mm-hmm. And technically, we are afforded to do that
right
now as it is, but usually you would use.
Right.
You have your attorney, but there's times where you're like, hey, we're gonna go with someone else. Kind of like if we have a attorney come in for employment issues.
Right,
we're
I
starting
get that.
to lean that way. Kind of like was brought up in the presentations of having someone different for that. But we're always afforded that opportunity. But I do understand kind of what you're saying. I think clarification is helpful, because what I hear, Mike, I guess with your motion, it sounds like you're saying just do what we're doing now. And just kind of, you're clarifying, because no matter what, right now, if we ever want to go with a different, we do not have to use Von Bryson or any one of their attorneys.
Right.
With every single issue we have, we could choose a different attorney.
Von Bryson, if Hector's not gonna handle it,
Yeah.
he's gonna bring one of his people in. That's where the choice comes in. Do we wanna go with another, rather than Hector, go with one of their experts, or find somebody that we want to use?
Right, and that should be up
have
to
that
us.
option.
Like happened at this meeting, where we requested that someone be on to explain for that condemnation, and then, he said he wasn't going to be available. Would that include Chris Kinky? We would have to talk to PD about that, because they're on the phone a lot.
Well, the situation the way it is now.
Okay.
Using what we are now.
So you'd like to continue as it is now, just you're clarifying that we got the option, we don't ever have, we can use different attorneys if we want to.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, sure, okay.
I
Okay,
like
understand.
the group we have now, and I like the fact that Hector brings in other specialists at times. I don't have any issues with them. I think they're doing a good job.
Well, we're gonna have a motion die here
Yeah.
quick if it doesn't get a second, so I'm just so everybody's, because
I
I don't
want
want
to
to let
clear,
it,
yeah, because I guess I took Mike's as that anything
I don't want to let it go too
going
long,
right
'cause
now
then
is
it's
Hector,
unfair,
anything
like it's
that,
a
we go with
motion.
somebody else. But that's not what you were saying.
No.
You're
Okay,
saying we
that's
stay
how I
as
took it.
is. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, so it's been, what?
Go ahead.
What's
You
wrong?
better clarify it.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, you can restate your motion. It's been seconded. Restate your motion, and then I'll make sure that she's getting a second to it, because it's best that you're making the motion that you say what you want.
I make the motion that we maintain our current legal counsel as the attorney now, with the option that in the future, we can go outside and pick an attorney that we think would do the job for us. Or-
Okay, and we do
Special-
have that option right
We have
now
that option.
regardless, so you could,
Right, so just maintain what we have right now.
okay.
Okay.
And I will second that we,
You might want to say the attorney, you might want to say the Von Bryson name
Von
there, but
Bryson,
that's what
Von
you meant.
Bryson.
You're seconding
I'm
that, so-
seconding, yes.
It's been moved and seconded to stay with the current situation, or the current attorney we have now, which is Hector De La Mora with Von Bryson. It's been moved and seconded, discussion. With that, I just, to take away any confusion, we always have the right at any given time, if we wanted to, for every issue, even if the board all of a sudden, because there's negotiated prices, I mean, if myself or the administrator started calling some other attorney that was $260, you know, not saying the administrator or any of us would, but, you know, it'd be like, hey, we already negotiated prices, why are you doing that? Obviously there'd be, but the board at any time could do that, and the administrator could come and say, hey, I got this really good attorney for this situation, let's use that attorney, you know, any of those things, it's up to the board. Having a retainer, or that letter of engagement just means that they are there for us. A lot of those things are negotiated. But it doesn't mean that we have to use that attorney. We are the client, and we can, you know,
Right.
we can use whoever we want. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record that I think there was a real opportunity here for us to continue to grow and innovate. You know, we've retained the same services for a few decades, and, you know, that's come up a couple of times in the last couple of meetings, that we are growing and we're changing and we're bringing in different thoughts and different concepts as we are kind of moving forwards. And so I just wanted to be on record for that I'm not in support of staying with the current attorney.
And I'd like to add to that, that has been brought up a lot about that we're in a transition. It was just at our last meeting where a person that had served for a long time and told that it's a transition and we're going just different directions, and it's what the board's looking for. So I was very, very impressed with the second choice, and the more open concept, the more clarity that was going to be offered, full disclosure, that kind of stuff that was going to be presented to us. The staff meetings, things like that. There was just a lot of good things that were offered to that, and I agree with Trustee Meyer that we are picking an attorney, not necessarily a firm, so I feel very comfortable with that she is going to a different firm, that those two attorneys will be going to a new firm, because it's the attorneys that have come forth to say what they would do for us. And I think, I just think it's a new direction. And again, to the president's stating lately that we are in a transition, and those, I just agree with them.
Agree with?
With you, with saying that we're in a transition state, and that sometimes it's just time for new voices and new thoughts, new opinions, direction.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm happy that the motion was made, and I will be voting to stay with Hector and Von Bryson. I'm very happy with that. Originally, when this process started, Hector was standing here giving us a letter of engagement, and someone said, don't we have to bid out for that? And I said, well, we don't have to. And then the ball got rolling, and then we got the bids, and he was the cheapest, and then I was like, well, no, let's keep on going with that. Regardless of that, we're going through a lot of things. He's come up with the moratorium on registered sex offenders. I'm very happy with his service. I believe the village is going through a lot of transition and changes. I think while we're going through lawsuits and things like that, probably not the best time to do, go through some of those changes. If you're just about to go into the playoffs with a baseball team, it's probably not a good time to change the manager, even though you might have to make a change at the end of the season. So with that being said, I think Hector's doing a great job. I've asked the board many a times and tried to ask people, what's the problem? People said there is no problem. The prices are the lowest. So I think we're doing the best thing for the taxpayer and the citizens. And Hector's doing a heck of a job. I say we stay with them. What I will say about the other attorneys is they all came with professionalism. I have no doubt that especially I've worked with her before. Kathy Gutengunst is an outstanding attorney. And but I'm very happy with Hector's services, and I'm very happy, and I hope that the vote ends up being that there's enough people that want to keep them, because I think the village is going to suffer if we don't. Any other discussion?
It's your time to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
That motion is carried. Announcements.
30 seconds.
I just want to give you a heads up that East Capitol is going to be open tonight with the assistance of the police department, and we are on track for North Avenue. Hopefully that'll be done and completed and opened on Saturday. Thank you.
Mr. Falconer, I'm sorry about making that horrible decision on Saturday.
All good.
Come on.
Nope, that's me.
Thank you. I actually have one for Rupert and Milky, so it's great that they're in the audience. Shout out to the communication we're getting. It is phenomenal. I get text messages, but I get an email, and it's just really well done, and it's been really helpful for us to continue to talk to the residents. And then I love it because then the business community is picking up on it and they're resharing it as well. So kudos all around. It's really well done and really easy to follow. So thank you.
Anybody else for announcements?
I make the motion, we adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor? Aye. This meeting is adjourned.